Hello everyone. I'm glad to see you on my channel. The story I'm going to tell you today is pure. It is true that all the bad things that happen in life happen for a reason. It is said that we can appreciate the good things, the things when they happen to us. I hope you enjoy this story. I wish you a pleasant viewing experience.
Billy got up much earlier than usual today. There was a good reason for that. Today at school, the principal was going to present a diploma for winning the regional Olympiad. Billy has loved math since childhood, although no one has ever taught him much. When he was 6 years old, he learned to count and write letters on his own. At that time, he played for days on end with a neighbor girl, Elizabeth, who was a couple of years older than him. Billy often admired Elizabeth's primer and notebooks. Elizabeth liked it very much. She was proud that she had already gone to school and knew a lot of things. And Billy and his little sister Leslie still had a long way to go. Later, Billy went to school. He was very proud that he could read fluently and add on his fingers while his peers were just learning the letters of the alphabet. So he didn't have to spend a lot of time at home on lessons. And he had a lot of free time. Even then, he decided not to waste this time. He opened his primer and taught his little sister Leslie, who at that time was barely 4 years old. This year, Billy was already in 9th grade. When the question arose about who would go to the Math Olympiad, Lucy's teacher did not have to think long about Billy. Knowing Billy's family circumstances well, Lucy decided to take the whole process into her own hands. She paid for his trip to the regional center and back. Lucy had no doubt that Billy would live up to her expectations. And so it was. Yesterday afternoon, a message came from the district department saying that Billy had won first place and had scored the maximum number of points. Lucy congratulated Billy in front of everyone and asked everyone to call their parents tomorrow, where there would be a ceremonial presentation of awards to all the participants of the Olympiad and a tea party. Billy told his mother about it in the evening. His mother listened indifferently and went on with her work. She's tired today, but tomorrow she'll be in a good mood when the principal presents me with a diploma and her with a letter of thanks, Billy thought to himself. He finally finished styling his hair with gel, and he had shined his shoes the night before. By now, Leslie had already had time to iron his white shirt. "Thank you, sis. If I get the money with the diploma today, I'll buy you a chocolate bar," Billy said and kissed her on the forehead. "Now get ready yourself, or you'll be late because of me. And make sure you make a sandwich and eat it before you go out," he added like a caring brother. After the end of the third lesson, the teacher asked everyone to line up. Tables were already set up in the courtyard of the school, and dozens of parents were sitting there in anticipation. Lucy excitedly ran around the classrooms and urged everyone to get in line as quickly as possible. "Billy, are your parents here yet?" she asked. "Mom promised to come. Is she here yet?" Billy asked. "I haven't seen her yet," Lucy said, shrugged her shoulders, and turned away, sighing heavily. Her fellow literature teacher, Betty, was whispering in her ear. "Lucy, why traumatize the boy like that? I don't think we'll see Billy's mother or father. It'll be business as usual." "That's what I mean, and the child is a pity," Lucy said and sighed once again. The gala was declared open. The principal made a solemn speech and began to hand out certificates and gifts. Billy kept looking at his mother from the crowd. He believed that she was late and was about to come running. But his mother never showed up. The principal presented Billy with his diploma first. She praised him, called him the pride of the whole school. As Billy expected, the school administration had prepared a gift for Billy's mother, but Billy himself had to receive the gift from the principal's hands. Leslie stood in the opposite row and jumped up and down as her brother received his well-deserved awards. As soon as the lessons were over, Billy hurried home. He didn't find his mother or father at home. He was hungry, but the refrigerator at home was empty. Billy changed his clothes and prepared something to eat for the whole family. Just as he sat down at the table, the front door to the apartment opened, and he heard a familiar sobbing sound. "Leslie, is that you?" Billy asked. Leslie didn't answer and continued sobbing. Billy seemed to realize what was wrong and walked over to his little sister. As soon as she saw her brother, she immediately cried. There they are, behind our playground on the sidewalk. Billy understood without further explanation what he was talking about. He and Leslie didn't have much time. He looked at his watch and figured he had about 20 or 30 minutes to eat lunch himself and feed Leslie. Then he'd have to get his little sister and get out of the apartment right away. Okay, stop crying. I'd got it. I made some food, and it's gonna take you a while to change. So you'd better eat right away and we'll go, Billy said and ran to his room to gather all the necessary textbooks for tomorrow. He might have to spend the night at one of his friends or his grandmother's house tonight. He would deal with that later. While he was thinking about where to send Leslie and how to make sure she didn't have to spend the night tonight, in 10 minutes Billy had already packed everything he needed. Leslie had time to change her clothes and wash the dishes behind her. Then they hurried to the exit. As they left the driveway, Leslie sobbed again and pointed toward a large road where a man and a woman were engaged in a strange activity. The man would take 2 or 3 steps and fall to the ground, and the woman would try to pick him up, but she was unsuccessful. Then she'd turn to persuasion. True, you can't hear what the mother says to the drunken father from here, but the content of the conversation is clear to their children. Billy took his sister's hand and hurried to get out of sight quickly before the drunken father saw him. The mother seemed to see them and discreetly made a gesture with her hand for them to hurry. They managed to quickly hide behind the bushes in the yard and from there watch what was happening. The father fell many more times until he reached the front door of the driveway. The mother would not calm down. Harvey, come on, it's just a little bit left to go home. You're strong, you can do it. Harvey, instead of getting to his apartment faster, said something inappropriate and even tried to sing some songs. From the outside, it seemed that this man's drunkenness only concerned his woman. Drunk Harvey didn't care about anything. He was fine. Even if he falls asleep somewhere under the fence, he has a caring and loving wife, Selena, who will find him and bring him home at any cost. And it doesn't matter that this whole picture causes their children great shame in front of their friends and peers in the yard. And it doesn't matter that this kind of care Selena has been unleashing on her husband for years now. And it does not matter that the son and daughter are completely left to themselves. But despite this, they have grown up to be amazingly diligent and intelligent children. And the fact that in the future neither their diligence nor their intelligence will save their well-being never bothers their parents. Billy and Leslie spent the rest of the day in the park behind the garages playing with their friends. Evening came, by which time all of their friends were starting to go home. Billy was embarrassed to once again ask one of them for a sleepover. He was thinking more about Leslie. He had 2 options: to take her to her grandmother's house, where she wouldn't make it to her first class tomorrow, or to leave her at home, where she didn't want to go and was already sobbing. Billy, as always, hoped for the best and chose the second option. When they got home, the mother was sitting on the balcony doing her usual thing. As soon as she saw her children, she quickly took both of them by the hands, led them into the kitchen, locked the door from the inside, and began to scold them in a whisper. Where do you go all day long? Didn't I tell you to stay home from school? The neighborhood kids played for an hour and went home, but where have you been? Selena glared menacingly at her children one by one. That she was mean, they realized without her scolding. Selena is always angry when she has to spend a long time searching the neighborhood for her husband Harvey and then dragging him home, coaxing him nearly unconscious. The kids realized this as early as lunchtime when they got home from school. More specifically, Billy had figured it out back at school when his mother had failed to show up for the ceremonial lineup. He had hoped that at least at home he would be able to present a gift from the principal and show off his diploma. But the situation at home does not change from year to year. He was sure that now no diploma and no gift would help Selena to become a little kinder and more attentive to her children. While the mother was reprimanding her children, a loud, incomprehensible voice came from the parents' bedroom. It seems that tonight's scenario is now no secret to anyone. A moment later, the kitchen door opened and a swollen Harvey stood at the entrance. "Oh, there are our children. Mother, where have they been all day?" asked the drunken father. "Well, I'm busy figuring that out right now," Selena said with a tremor in her voice. "Billy, you're not living up to my expectations. It's a shame. I wanted to raise my son to be a real man, and he's growing up to be something he's not," Harvey said, walked over to the refrigerator, looked at it, and slammed the door loudly. Billy stood in the corner, trying to be as close to Leslie as possible, and mentally wondered what he was going to be guilty of today. He went over all of his father's recent accusations this month, but his father's resourcefulness was ahead of his memory this time too. "You asked for a puppy. We got you a puppy. Where is he? Animals are a responsibility. And my son's responsibility is very bad. Otherwise, Mother, how do you explain that he couldn't even tame a dog?" Harvey said, setting himself up for an interminably long conversation about a puppy from 3 years ago. Billy was offended, and once again, he couldn't stand his emotions. "Daddy, you threw that puppy out of the balcony. I wanted to save him. I would have gotten him out. You wouldn't even let me pick him up on the ground. But you're still accusing me of killing our puppy. Don't you dare cross your father." Harvey pounded on the table, and then he continued his pointless monologue. "Mother, it's your upbringing. You see, your son is still a green kid, but he dares to teach his father. Dad, I'm telling it like it is. Why do you make up trivial excuses just to scold us?" Billy squeezed out all his resentment, but his mother immediately pulled him back and pushed him to the side, making him realize that the best tactic in this case was to silently tolerate and agree with his father. "Where are all the flowers?" Leslie wanted flowers. Her mother bought some and planted them in a pot. "You don't even know how to water 3 bushes properly." Now the father transferred his senseless claims to his daughter. Leslie was already crying quietly by this point, and when the father began his onslaught, she started sobbing. But she also knows very well that she will get even more for crying. So she tried her best to keep all her emotions inside her. It was noticeable, by the way. She was almost choking on her tears, and her hands were shaking. These pointless educational conversations, as Harvey called them, lasted until midnight. The hungry, tired children had only one regret, that they had wasted a sleepover at their friend's house and had come to their own. Selena occasionally backed up her husband's nonsensical accusations and busied herself on the balcony. Both Billy and Leslie are sure that if their mother had wanted to end this publicanization, she would have done so long ago. They all their conscious life cannot understand why the mother allows the drunken father constantly morally abuse their children and torment them with completely empty reproaches. There is still a childish naivety in them, thanks to which they both do not lose hope that someday Selena will stand up for their defense and all this nightmare will end. But Billy is 16 years old and Leslie is 13 years old, and they can't wait for that moment. 2 years have passed and Billy's graduation day is approaching. He is waiting for this day with excitement because he is graduating with a gold medal. Of course, at this celebration, he wants to see his parents, their pride and joy for their son. This time, Billy is sure that his father will definitely be happy about this achievement of his son, and everything will go differently. Finally, the day has come. Billy beautifully styled his hair with gel. Selena put on her best dress. Before the graduation, the father of the family did not drink for 3 days and was ready to participate in an important family event. The awarding of the gold medal was the key event of this celebration. At this moment, somewhat envious of the medalist Billy, Some were genuinely happy. Harvey was happy too. It was noticeable by the fact that he was already drunk by the time the ceremonial part of the event began. The younger students showed their musical numbers, singing and dancing. Parents sat in the hall right behind the teachers. At the next performance of the younger pupils, one of the adults came on stage and started dancing with them. The hall immediately burst into laughter. Billy turned his head and could not believe his eyes. Harvey had once again surpassed his expectations and was dancing on the stage among the school children. He got up from his seat and ran to his mother, who only shrugged her shoulders and tried to calm her son down. Billy was ashamed of his father's behavior. The whole hall laughs at him, and he continues to dance in a drunken frenzy. After a while, Billy went up to his mother and said, "Mom, take your father home before he does something else." "I tried, he won't. He wants to thank your teachers for you. We'll sit for a while and then we'll go," said Selena. Billy was now at peace. Dancing on stage wasn't all his father's talent. He might do something else before the end of the event. This isn't a restaurant where alumni and parents can let their emotions run wild. While everyone is still in school, the events are strictly supervised by the principal and all the teachers. No one is supposed to behave freely in this place. But Harvey doesn't seem to care about such rules. In the middle of the event, the students performed a white swan dance. The children twirled around in white outfits with wings on their backs. At this point, the audience in the auditorium became animated again. Harvey was creative again and literally dragged the literature teacher Betty to the white dance by force. She resented and resisted as much as she could, but Harvey was not going to back down. He forcefully dragged the teacher right to the center of the stage and began to twirl her in a white dance. Betty hid her face in shame in front of the students. Billy covered his eyes with his hands and wished he could fall under the ground right now and not come out until all this shame was over and erased from people's minds. Selena seemed to notice her son's embarrassment and headed for the stage as well. As she jostled with the dancing children, she tried to explain something to her husband and get him off the stage, but he roughly pushed her away. She fell right on the stage. Billy couldn't take it anymore and ran to his mother's aid. The school principal also ran to help. Thus, an innocent children's dance turned into one family's desperate struggle with the participation of educators. The school principal tried to explain to Harvey that it is not appropriate for a parent to behave like this in front of the children, but in response she heard foul language. In the end, no one was able to reach an agreement with the drunken Harvey. He struggled to return to his seat in the audience, but continued to demand that the festivities continue. The brightest day that Billy had waited for all year became the worst day for him. For the rest of the event, Harvey took turns approaching the teachers, bragging about how he had raised such a smart son, hugging and kissing them. After the event was over, Harvey was no longer able to understand words or stand on his own 2 feet. He was taken out of the school auditorium with great difficulty, but he sat down in the yard near the main entrance and continued to talk incoherent nonsense. Next to him, as always, was Selena, so helpless and so driven by her husband's inadequate behavior. Billy watched what was happening from the window of his classroom and made a plan on how to escape unnoticed from the company of his classmates, who were going to move on to the celebration of their holiday. At that moment, his teacher Lucy entered the classroom. She immediately turned to Billy. "Billy, come with me," she said in a commanding tone. She usually called Billy by his first name, so this familiarity did not surprise Billy now. After all the teachers were now angry about his parents' behavior. Lucy led him to the principal's office. When he entered the principal's office, he saw that almost all of his teachers were sitting at the desk. Billy couldn't raise his eyes and face them out of shame. He stepped over the threshold into the office and stood guiltily in the corner where the closet stood. "Billy," the school principal addressed him. Billy continued to stand silent and stare at the floor. "Billy, from the very first days that you stepped into this school, You have been a diligent student. You mastered all subjects well and never upset your teachers with your behavior. Today's gold medal is your well-deserved achievement. We want to congratulate you once again on this success, and we are sure that in the future you will become an excellent specialist and, what is important, a man with a capital letter. The principal said these words, and the seated teachers joined them. It seemed that the principal wanted to say something else, but then she stammered a little and handed the speech to Betty. Betty stood up and said, "Billy, you stand on the threshold of adulthood like all of your peers. We would like you to enter this adulthood with confidence. Perhaps some of the events of today upset you a lot, but you must understand that children are not responsible for the actions and behavior of their parents. We always knew that you had to overcome some difficulties in your family. Even as a child, you coped with these trials with dignity and managed to show yourself only from the best side. So, let today's event not overshadow your joy today. You should think about your future and let it be beautiful," said Betty. Billy was touched to the core. He expected the teachers to be upset with his parents' behavior, but instead they made it clear that they understood him. This act of support really had a positive effect on Billy. But the shame of having such people as his parents and knowing about their behavior, even the teachers knew about it, constantly gnawed at Billy's soul. The gold medal gave Billy the right to enter any prestigious educational institution without any obstacles. From childhood, he dreamed of becoming a financier, so he had no problems with the choice of profession. He successfully passed all the last exams and began to slowly get ready to go to the city. His father, of course, insisted that Billy should study at the engineering high school in their town. His mother, as always, had no opinion on the matter, but Billy realized that his place was in one of the most prestigious universities in the capital. Therefore, he did not emphasize his parents' position. Only he was madly worried about Leslie. How would she now cope with the familiar reality without her brother's support? She had practically grown up in Billy's arms, and at school, he had always looked out for her. Leslie realized that too, but she tried to pretend that she could manage on her own. The day Billy left, Leslie walked him to the bus station. They drove in silence. Billy saw Leslie wiping tears from her face with the corner of his eye. When daddy's drunk or mommy's mad at you, you don't have to be afraid, and you don't have to put up with their attacks. Just get your stuff and go to grandma's. I told her everything again, even though she already knows everything. You're older now, you're more visible. Take care of yourself, and try not to spend the night at your friends' or girlfriends' houses. You'll be safer at grandma's, Billy said. Leslie continued to sob and was no longer hiding her tears. Both know that Leslie is pretty much on her own now. Grandma, though she knows about her son's family's problems, can't help much. Billy and Leslie intuitively guessed that only Mom can solve this problem. But Selena had never had a strong character to protect the children and put her husband in his place, and there was not even a hint of it. The only idea that lived in her was that she loved her Harvey and intended to continue to serve him at all costs. She doesn't realize that she has power over this weak man, and that if she tries hard enough, she can stop this ugly lifestyle where she follows his every move and listens to his delusions. Even after almost 20 years of living together and the same duration of his drinking, Selena has not realized that it is useless to fall for the words and behavior of a drinking man. She persists in persuading her drunken husband not to swear in the street, to find the strength to somehow get home, not to get angry and hear her. She spends all her energy on this. She ends up feeling completely devastated. Inside herself, she left nothing for her children. All her care, warmth and tenderness was given to her husband, who didn't really need it all. That is why Leslie and Billy remember about their mother only her anger and nagging on every occasion. They are both not used to counting on her support and understanding. If Billy benefited from it, as he grew up a strong man, but for Leslie it turned out to be a tragedy. But while no one knows about it, Leslie is still just a teenager. Gather all your strength in your fist and be patient for just 3 years. I'll get a job as soon as I get into town. As soon as you graduate, you can go to school. If there's anything you need, write to me. I'll give you my address. And please be strong," Billy said, and kissed his sister on the forehead goodbye. As soon as he arrived in the city, Billy applied to one of the prestigious universities. He was gladly accepted. He would study at the expense of the budget, and for the first time he could live in a dormitory. Having solved all these questions in a few days, Billy decided not to waste time and found a job at the nearest supermarket. He would be able to get his first paycheck before the school year started. He had already divided it. Half of it he would give to his mother to buy everything Leslie needed, and the other half he would leave for his own expenses. But the hardest part was Leslie. In the absence of her brother, she tried to find support from her mother. But Leslie suddenly found that her mother was like a stranger to her. There was no warmth between them, no attraction. This made her even more depressed. She remembers recently dreaming of having the same close relationship with her mother as all her friends. She compared her life to that of her friend Elizabeth. Elizabeth can tell her mother everything. She can even ask her to buy something and she does. They can even joke with their mom and their mom laughs. Elizabeth's mom is aware of all her secrets, and when she needs it, she gets support from her. Also, Elizabeth's mom often makes compliments, from which Elizabeth instantly blossoms, and Leslie sadly lowers her eyes and sighs quietly. All of Leslie's attempts have been to little avail. Mom was ready to communicate with her daughter only on domestic topics, and that, when Leslie tried to give her childish support, Selena was annoyed and quickly transferred the topic of conversation. This was a new blow to Leslie's growing-up psyche. Her grades deteriorated. No matter how much she remembered her brother's advice and tried to study hard, it was as if her brain was completely disobeying her. Her attention was constantly scattered and drifting off into the distance. In her childish naivete, she decided to talk to her mother about it. "Mom, for some reason it's getting hard for me to understand the lessons. I read everything, but I can't understand anything. What should I do?" Leslie asked. "Then you're not reading carefully. When you read, you have to think about what you're reading. And your thoughts are somewhere out there, flying in the clouds. What, you're thinking about boys already?" Selena cut her off harshly. Leslie's still childish psyche took these words as another insult. Yes, there is a boy she likes, but Leslie is absolutely sure that he will never pay attention to her, and she wouldn't even think about socializing or dating him. She was really concerned about her grades, but her mom, instead of helping her daughter, had driven her deeper into a dead end. Added to Leslie's depressed state were feelings of shame and guilt. However, Selena was not much different from many mothers. Not every mother realizes that a growing daughter is still her child, and a child in her teens needs the attention of her adult loved ones even more. And this need for attention is much greater than even in infancy. But for some reason, most women who become mothers of daughters as if completely forget that they themselves come from adolescence. After a series of these conversations, Leslie felt a deep despair. She was filled with great fear. If she didn't do well in her studies, her final grades would be bad. With those grades, she'd never get in. And if she doesn't get in, she'll end up living with her parents for the rest of her life. After a few more days, Leslie found out that she absolutely did not want to see her peers and school in general. Now she has a new habit, leaving the house early in the morning, but not going to school. She would go anywhere just to pass the time. She started breaking up with her friends. She didn't even want to go to her grandmother's house. But Grandma turned out to be a little wiser than her mother, although the grandmother did not know what depression in teenagers is. But she immediately noticed the changes in her granddaughter's behavior. "If you want, you can always come to my house, but you can't skip school. If your father finds out about it, you'll be in trouble again," Grandma said. "But I still don't have the strength to study, Grandma. I don't understand anything. I can't learn anything." If I go to school like this, I'll only get more F's. I'd rather not be there at all than get D's and embarrass Billy, Leslie said, staring blankly out the window. Grandmother realized from her granddaughter's downcast look that her frustration was serious. She allowed Leslie to stay with her for a few days, and she told her wayward son Harvey and wimpy daughter-in-law Selena that she needed Leslie for housework. They didn't object. Leslie spent all day long lying staring at the ceiling. She refused to eat, slept badly at night, and often woke up with nightmares. Her grandmother was concerned about her condition, but people of her generation were not familiar with such solutions as antidepressants or psychologists' services. So she patiently continued to persuade her granddaughter to return to her old life. A couple days later, her friend Elizabeth came to Leslie's house. She asked her grandmother's permission if she could go to the movies with Leslie after lunch. Grandma even got excited. Maybe that way Leslie could finally get out of this state. But Leslie was very indifferent to her friend's suggestion. When her grandmother and Elizabeth began to persuade her to go to the movies with her friend, then she burst out with emotions. "So tell me, Grandma, that you're sick of me too. I know that no one has ever needed me. Why do I need this kind of life? I'd rather die than live like this." Leslie was really hysterical. Elizabeth left her bewildered. Grandmother thought that Leslie was showing her forming character in this way. All in father went, she thought, and did not give importance to the words of her granddaughter. That same night in the morning, Grandma heard Leslie leave her room and go into the bathroom. Once again, Grandma didn't pay much attention to this little thing. She decided to get another hour of sleep, since she planned to take Leslie to the store in the morning to get something. Maybe it would distract her and put her in a better mood. Waking up, Grandma decided to wake Leslie up and have breakfast together. When she opened the bedroom door, she didn't see her granddaughter there. Maybe she'd gone to school after all, or gone home to her parents. She thought she should call and find out. Then she headed for the bathroom. When she opened the door, Grandma almost fainted at what she saw. Leslie was sitting on the floor and making sobbing noises. Grandma walked over and lifted her head, foam appearing in the corners of her mouth. Her face was blue and her body was almost lifeless. Grandma, with shaky legs, barely made it to the phone to call an ambulance. While the ambulance was on its way, she floundered on the landing from one neighbor to another. The ambulance arrived quickly, and Leslie was rushed to the hospital. Her grandmother was about to go to pick her up. Only before she left, she remembered to call her son and daughter-in-law. No matter how many times she dialed, neither Selena nor Harvey picked up. A couple of hours after her hospitalization, the doctor informed Grandma that Leslie had gotten drunk on pills and wanted to quietly pass away. The grandmother clutched at her heart. The doctor advised her to immediately see a specialist, such as a psychologist. The grandmother, of course, did not understand what this specialist does and how to find him. The doctor also asked about Leslie's parents. When the grandmother told him that the father was a drunkard and the mother was voluntarily completely at his mercy, leaving not a single drop of energy for her children, the doctor shook his head. It became clear to him that the problem with his family was not just the drinking father, it was much deeper than that. Leslie had come to her senses and was now begging her grandmother not to tell her parents all this. She realized that in the next few days her father would get drunk again, and she would get a lot of unpleasant words. If her mother found out, she would be even more furious at her daughter's antics. The child was absolutely certain that nothing could change her parents. The grandmother knew her son and her daughter-in-law too well, so she went along with Leslie and agreed not to tell her parents anything about it. They weren't particularly interested. Selena was calm that Leslie was at her grandmother's house and she would take care of her. In 2 days, Leslie was ready to be discharged. The doctor realized that the grandmother alone could not do much about her granddaughter's depression. That's why he brought his colleague psychotherapist himself and asked him to prescribe the right pills. Already after a week, Leslie began to gradually come to her senses. She felt that she missed her friends and her parents too. Her grandmother took her to the store and bought some beautiful dresses. After saying a warm goodbye to her grandmother and apologizing for her emotional act, Leslie returned home again. As hard as it was for her, the close contact with her own death had changed her a lot. She became stronger. Her maturation process has accelerated. Now she's determined to do whatever it takes to finish school and help her brother. And then there's a new life. What kind of life? I don't care what it is, as long as I don't have to see that drunken face and that angry and unhappy mother running around. A person, no matter how much he wants the most beautiful conditions for himself, in fact, can also perfectly adapt to everything bad. Therefore, Selene did not realize that she and her husband had long ago become hostages to the dark sides of each other's souls. Usually in a dark space, a person is not able to notice that there is a way out somewhere. So the next 8 years passed unnoticed. No fundamental changes in the life of Harvey and Selena did not happen, except for the fact that Selena is increasingly ill and sometimes cannot get out of bed for weeks. Leslie had long ago left for the city, went wherever she wanted to go, and finished her studies quite successfully. Then she got a job, and then she got a promotion. In that time alone, she had managed to get married and divorced twice. Billy had been working since the first days of his arrival in town and had never known a day's rest. He successfully combined work with his studies. By the time he graduated, he had already made a name for himself in a private company. He made a brilliant career and achieved a certain financial stability. When he met Julia on his way, Billy had no doubt that this girl was his destiny. Therefore, he did not bother to think for a long time, and they modestly married after 3 months of acquaintance. By the time their eldest son Tom was born, they had their own spacious apartment. Billy never hid from Julia that he was always worried about his parents, especially his mother. Therefore, when he proposed to go to his parents with little Tom, she agreed with joy. By the time Billy arrived, Mom was in bed. Harvey was now allowed to get drunk and lie under every fence without any restrictions. Even though Selena was no longer able to run after him and drag him home all the time, she still continued to worry more about her husband than herself. Billy used to come to the family home every year too. But this time, for the first time, he noticed that his mother had aged noticeably. His father was as healthy as ever, so he didn't think of changing his lifestyle. He's doing just fine. After staying a couple of days, Billy made an important offer to his parents. He would take them to his house. His father would go to a drug treatment center. His mother would be seen by the best doctors and put on her feet. During this time, Billy promised to make repairs in the apartment. After full recovery, if the parents want to return to their house, they can do so. Selena, as before, was not able to make her own decisions, and so she watched her husband's reaction. Harvey, of course, wasn't going to change anything in his life. Besides, he was against Billy taking Selena to the city. He wasn't even convinced by his wife's serious condition. What are those doctors gonna do for her? They'll prescribe all sorts of chemicals, and it's a waste of money. Harvey still underestimated the danger to Selena's life. Billy and Julia had to spend several days of futile persuasion. When they both realized that reasonable arguments were not working on Harvey, they decided to leave him to his own devices. But Billy could not leave his sick mother without proper care and support. The next day, Julia packed her mother-in-law's things, and they set out on their journey. When they arrived in town, Billy immediately took his mother to the doctor. The tests revealed a whole bunch of chronic diseases. Billy decided that with such diagnoses, he could not send his mother back home, where she would once again spend all her energy and strength on completely useless care for his father. After being discharged from the hospital, Julia took full responsibility for Selena's care. Not a month later, Harvey's neighbors started calling Billy and Selena. They complained that Harvey was bringing in personal drunks to the apartment or debauchery in the yard, or fights with one of the neighbors. Eventually, the police took him away. Billy decided not to interfere with his father's choices. But Selena couldn't get over the news. God willing, I'll get better and go home right away. My Harvey's probably waiting for me. It'll be cold soon. God forbid he should fall asleep under a fence and ruin his health, Selena repeated day and night. Mom, Dad's a grown man. If he drinks and falls asleep under the fence, he should feel all the consequences of such a lifestyle. But for now, in your 30+ years of life, you've never let him feel the full extent of his downfall. That's why it never once occurred to him to stop drinking. So you've lost your own health, and he doesn't give a damn. You still can't understand that a person's way of life is his choice, and everyone has to take responsibility for his choice, Billy said. But for Selena, these words were unconvincing. As soon as she got a little stronger, she immediately began to insist that Billy send her home. She was not even stopped by her small and affectionate grandson Tom, who had already grown very fond of his grandmother. Not even Leslie, who had recently divorced her drunken second husband and was still in dire need of a mother's support and understanding, could stop her. Billy had to let his mother go home again, but his heart was restless for her. He decided that he would make a surprise visit to his parents' home in a couple of months and see if anything had changed in his parents' lifestyle. Before he left, he stopped by his neighbor Aubrey's house with a small gift, told her briefly about what was going on in their family, and asked her to keep an eye on Selena. Not half a month later, Aubrey called to say that Selena had suffered a seizure and had been taken to the hospital. At that moment, Leslie was visiting Billy and Julia. After hearing the unpleasant news, she decided to go to her parents' house with her brother. When they arrived, her mother was in the hospital, and Harvey was enjoying his free life as usual with obscure companions on the street. The doctor reported that Selena's illness was progressing. She needed good care after treatment. This time, Billy was determined to take his mother back to his house and not let her back in under any circumstances. He again offered his father to come with them, but as usual, he didn't see the need for it. Besides, he still didn't think Selena needed to go anywhere either. The protracted family arguments turned into an emotional showdown. The stubbornness of parents first of all upset Leslie. The final straw was her father's words when he told them the following: "If you're so worried about your mother, then one of you stay by her side and take care of her. And for a long time, no one cooks hot meals for me, no one to run to the store for kefir in the morning. That'll come in handy," he said. "Dad, Mom's done nothing but run after you all her life. You could at least respect her health by going with her. We don't hope that you'll finally get your mind right and go to a drug counselor," Leslie said. "Why would I want to see a drug counselor? They're the ones that all the drunks go to. I know my norm. When I need to, I can stop drinking without problems. And now times are hard. Your mother is sick. It's hard for me to see all this. I find peace only in a shot," said Harvey, and again reached into the refrigerator for a bottle. "Dad, are you serious? You seriously could stop drinking at any time, but you don't do it for our entire conscious life. Mom ruined her health because of you. You're the reason she didn't have the energy for us when we were kids. It's because of you that she ruined her health," Leslie told me. "And you do not interfere in our relationship with my mother. You should have brought up your own children and your husband. Instead, you jump from one man to another." Father ruthlessly pressed on Leslie's sore spot. By the way, Leslie's first love, Arthur, turned out to be an inveterate gambler. She for a long time could not find the strength to divorce him until Billy intervened. After a while, Leslie met Tony, who turned out to be a very delicate and gentle young man. But a couple of months after the wedding, it turned out that he has a terrible addiction to alcoholic beverages. Leslie once again found herself being held hostage like her mother. This time she fell back into a terrible depression, just as she had in her teens. By this time, Leslie already knew her tendency to depression and was terribly afraid of it. She had already read that through depression, a person's soul wants to tell them that they are on the wrong path. Leslie pulled herself together and realized that living with an alcoholic was clearly not what she wanted to spend her life on. Regardless, she filed for divorce from Tony. Billy and Julia supported her in this, as they knew this fate all too well. And now Leslie is already scared to start a new relationship. She is not sure that she will be able to choose a normal person without any heavy addictions. That's why she goes to a psychologist, and the psychologist pointed out the roots of her problems. In Leslie's inner world, there is no image of a happy family. She has an idea about the sacrifice of a woman and the boundless selfishness of a man. That's why she creates exactly this kind of relationship again and again. And now her father, who is the protagonist of her such fate, dares to accuse her of this. Leslie decided not to miss the opportunity and speak out everything she has failed to do in her entire life. In fact, it's because of you and my mother that my personal life doesn't work out. You're the ones who failed to instill in us the image of a happy family. What I got from you was a knack for getting into ugly situations. Now don't you dare blame me for that. It's really on your conscience, Leslie said and cried. Of course, Harvey thought it was all nonsense. In the end, Billy and Leslie decided to take Selena back to their house, leaving her father to his own devices, his old way of life. Upon arriving in town, Selena quickly went on the mend. Julia cared for her as if she were her own mother, but the doctor warned that the improvement might be temporary. By this point, Julia had given birth to their second son, who they named Mickey. Their oldest son, Tom, had already gone to school. Selena often calls her husband in Billy and Julia's absence. She wouldn't mind going away again, but the children won't let her go. He'd be lost without me. He's old. He's not in good health. If something happens to him, there's no one around, Selena sobs sometimes. Mom, you've given him your whole life. You've given him more care and attention than you ever gave Leslie and me. And what do you get in return? You think he's gonna give you a peaceful old age. You want to pick him up in the neighbors' yards and carry him home to his grave. Billy says to her, don't say that about him. Whatever he is, he's your father. He's actually a very good man. Only he's got a lot of heartache in him. His mother, your grandmother, never got on well with him. She always hurt him and thought he was nothing. Your father, as a well-mannered man, absorbed it all. He couldn't rest, so he sought solace in the bottle, and Selena continued to defend her husband. About these words, Billy agrees with his mother. He has been talking to different experts about the causes and effects of alcoholism for a long time. They tell him that alcohol addiction develops in those who do not know how to express their emotions when sober. Instead of growing up and learning to control their mental trauma, they prefer to flood it with alcohol and continue to nurture it. Also, experts said that alcoholics maintain such a life, helped by their female loved ones. In particular, it is either a mother or a wife. In Harvey's case, he was helped by both women, his mother and his wife. In order for an alcoholic to stop drinking, he must get out of this cycle and feel the consequences of his bad habit. In the end, Selena persuaded Billy to just go to his father and visit him. She promised that she wouldn't stay with him and would come back. When Billy and Selena arrived home, a complete stranger opened the door. "Who are you here to see?" a young woman with a baby in her arms asked. In the meantime, Billy could see that the apartment was nicely renovated and smelled cozy. A television was playing loudly in one of the rooms, and a man was talking loudly on the phone. For a moment, Billy thought he had gotten the address wrong. Actually, he hadn't gotten anything wrong. "Where's Harvey, the owner of this apartment?" Billy asked. "Oh, you mean the former owners of this apartment? They moved out a long time ago. We bought this apartment," the young woman said. "What do you mean you bought it? How could you buy it without my consent?" Selena asked. "We bought it from the bank, and they told us that the owners had mortgaged the apartment and had defaulted on the loan. Now Billy realized that his father had actually mortgaged the apartment, taken the money, and disappeared. And there was no way to get the apartment back. Only Selena was inconsolable. She spent the whole day making Billy walk around the usual courtyards, where Harvey could sit with his companions and drink alcohol. But nowhere of the usual habitats could they find him. So they went to the police station, but he wasn't getting there either. They even checked the city morgue, no sign of him there either. So Harvey is alive, with money and no special problems. Hardly calming his mother, Billy took her back to his place in town. As time passed, there was no word from Harvey. As the time counted down the years, Billy realized that he needed to rid his mother of her empty hopes. He managed to convince her that Harvey was most likely not alive and that they should hold a formal funeral wake and let him go. By then, Selena herself was tired of waiting, so she agreed without much difficulty. After that, indeed, her life became easier afterward. She learned to enjoy life, pay attention to her grandchildren, and put her health first. Julia still took excellent care of her mother-in-law. They even managed a couple of times to go on a joint vacation with their children and improve their health. Recently, Selena started going to church a lot. At least she told her children so. The children were not against it. On the contrary, supported her in it. Thankfully, the church was not far from home. One morning, Selena got ready to go to church again. A few minutes after she left, Julia realized she needed to go to the store. She picked up a large cart of groceries at the store and stood in line at the checkout looking out the window. Suddenly, she saw her mother-in-law walking by the store. Julia was surprised, for she had said she was going to church. But the church was just the other way around. Julia was curious. She paid at the store, went out and decided to follow her mother-in-law cautiously. At the nearest stop, her mother-in-law got into a cab and headed off in an unknown direction. Julia took a second cab and followed her. Stuck in traffic and circling the city, the cab arrived at the outskirts of the city. You could say that these places are considered slums. There are old houses, garbage everywhere, and heating pipes behind them. Selena let the cab go and went straight to the heating pipes. Julia kept up with her, but didn't catch her eye. Passing through the narrow yards, Selena came to a group of homeless people sitting near the heat pipe around a fire. It was the perfect place for the homeless to safely survive the winter. But why had Selena come here across town? Julia decided to creep closer. What was her surprise when she found a painfully familiar face in the company of the homeless? It was Harvey. She and Selena greeted each other warmly, sat down with them, laid out their gifts on a table of old crates, and talked animatedly with them. Now Julia realized that her mother-in-law probably didn't go to church. She had somehow found her beloved husband, who had taken a considerable sum of money from the bank and was wandering around freely. Apparently, she was afraid of Billy and Leslie's anger, so she didn't tell them anything about it. Julia thought long and hard about whether or not to tell Billy. In the end, she decided that it would be better if Billy saw it for himself. Once again, when Selena announced that she was going to church tomorrow, Julia and Billy decided to watch her. And once again, they were convinced that indeed Selena was going to visit Harvey's slum heater. That evening, Billy decided to talk to his mother about it. Selena denied it at first, convincing her son that he had obviously mistaken someone for her. "Mom, it's absurd. How could I confuse my own parents with someone else? I saw with my own eyes that it was you, and you went to meet your father. And he's probably making friends with the homeless and hanging out by the heating duct. Why didn't you tell us this before?" Billy asked. "I know you and Leslie don't like him. I didn't want to upset you, but I can't leave him. I'm worried about him. What if something happens to him on the street?" said Selena with a guilty look. "Mom, we never said we didn't love our father. Leslie and I have been hurt all our lives that he couldn't show his love for us when we needed it so badly. Come on, that's all in the past. We're adults now, and we have to act like adults. Let's go over there together and take him home." There's plenty of room for everyone, but you won't have to run to the other side of town, and your father will be warm," said Billy. It was a surprise to Selena. Of course, she was glad. That same afternoon in the evening, she and Billy headed over to the warming station to take Harvey in to see him. Admittedly, he had changed a lot over the years. For one thing, he had aged considerably. Street life had taken its toll on him. Instead of a well-fed man, Billy saw a shrunken and gaunt older man in front of him. Billy wanted to hug him, but Harvey was a little embarrassed and pulled back. The acrid odor of dirt immediately hit his nose. At home, he was sent straight to the bathroom. While he washed there, Billy took all of his belongings out of the apartment and threw them in the trash. Washed, trimmed, and dressed in clean clothes, Harvey finally felt like a man too. A couple days later, Billy sat his father across from him and again suggested that he see a drug counselor. Of course, his father still didn't think he was an alcoholic and promised that he wouldn't drink now. Billy decided to give him that chance and wait a while. Leslie during this period was again going through a breakup with a new young man. Their relationship had lasted about 2 years. Leslie insisted on getting married, and the young man kept taking his time. Billy and Julia advised not to hurry with marriage and better to look more closely at this young man. Leslie did so. She only had to watch him closely for a couple of weeks to find out that in fact the young man is already married, and he is just deceiving her. She is again on the verge of depression, but already by experience knows how to cope with this state. True, she now has a strong conviction that all her failed relationships are to blame for her childhood traumas. No matter how many psychologists she goes to, there are no practical results. For a while it seems that she has learned not to accept neglect, but as soon as she enters into a relationship, she immediately turns into an obsequious girl who is ready to tolerate everything for the sake of a man. As much as she was bitter to realize it, but in this she followed her mother. Therefore, she rarely visited her parents and tried to spend more time at work. Her parents remind her of her failed relationships, and she's had quite a few. One day, Julia stated to Billy that she couldn't find her gold jewelry in the apartment. Billy didn't pay much attention to these words. He thought it was typical female inattention. Most likely, she had put her jewelry somewhere and couldn't remember. Sometime later, Billy's expensive watch disappeared from the apartment. Now he's lost his peace. He only takes it off occasionally when he's at home. He told Julia about it. She only shrugged her shoulders in response. Billy's summer vacation was approaching. He had been working for years without a vacation, so this year he could finally relax with his family. He and Julia had planned an overseas trip, with Selena and Harvey staying in charge at home. The vacation went off without a hitch. Millie and Julia, along with their children, returned tanned and refreshed. But at home, a strange mystery was waiting for them again. This time, several things were missing from the house. They were an expensive souvenir vase that Billy's business partners had given them for their wedding, a rare painting, and Billy's branded commemorative pen. Billy asked his parents if anyone had come to the house while they were gone. Turns out, no strangers had ever set foot in the house. But Billy didn't like this series of mystery stories. He thought maybe some strange thieves had climbed in through the balcony. Just in case, he decided to install security cameras at home. The next time Julia's branded handbag went missing, it wasn't hard to spot the thief. It was Harvey. Billy realized that no amount of educational talk would fix an elderly addict. Apparently, the money Billy gave his father for pocket money did not allow him to buy the necessary amount of alcohol. Billy thought about it, consulted with knowledgeable people, and made a decision. Most likely, this decision will be taken by his parents in a huff. As always, Selena will stand up for her husband and protect him. Billy certainly loves and respects his father, and he loves his mother no less. Therefore, he wishes that at least in old age, they lived normally, not playing the big kid and his eternal sacrifice. In order not to embarrass his father in front of his grandchildren, Billy decided to organize this conversation outside the house. He invited his parents to a restaurant. Billy was going to have a non-alcoholic dinner, but Harvey showed up already tipsy. He spent the rest of the evening asking for and demanding more drinks. "Daddy, you have to know that we love you very much, that your mother loves you. But you should hear us. You deserve to live the rest of your life with dignity. To do that, you need to get rid of your alcohol addiction." Billy started the conversation. "Here we go. I know what I have to do. I don't have any addiction. It's how I calm my nerves. A couple of shots with a good appetizer, and my mood is normal. And you want to deprive me of this little joy of life?" Harvey insisted. "All drinkers think that, but they don't realize how far they've gone in their self-deception. Don't try to fool yourself, father. You think your drinking habits won't hurt anyone. Let's face it, Mom's been chasing you around and dragging you around all your life. You've drunk the apartment. You've slipped into homelessness, not to mention what you put us through as kids. It's got to end sometime," Billy said firmly. "That's all I need, for you to make some more claims on me. I didn't drink the apartment. I wanted to do business, so I took money from the bank. So I lost money. Who cares? Stop talking about it. Harvey doesn't seem to realize what he's doing. All right, let's not talk about the past. Then we can talk about the present. 3 months ago, Julia's gold jewelry went missing. Then my watch went missing. When we came back from vacation, we noticed something missing from the house again. I had to install a security camera in the house. I thought until the last minute that maybe someone else had come to the house. But that's not what the camera showed." Billy said it looked his father in the eye. Selena realized that a big scandal was brewing, and it made her quickly assume her usual image of her husband's savior. "Billy, what are you saying? Are you accusing Dad of stealing? Maybe he needed the money? He's a man, and a man should always have money. In your absence, maybe he didn't want to bother you with these questions. You could have been understanding," Selena said. "Mother, when will you finally realize that you are not a mother to your husband, and he is not a child, but about 50 years old like an adult who should be aware of his actions and deeds? You are depriving him of that opportunity. That in this way you are taking care of him, but really you are nurturing his demons. Realize that you will be much better off if he comes to his senses and becomes a self-sufficient person. For that to happen, he needs to start thinking on his feet. And so you've spent your whole life sober, and you still can't realize it," Billy said. So what do you suggest?" Harvey asked when all other arguments were over. "I've already arranged with a good drug treatment clinic where my friend works as a doctor. We'll go there tomorrow and leave you there. You will receive a full course of treatment for alcohol addiction. The best doctors will work with you. There will be psychotherapy. You'll come out a new man. All you have to do is agree to it. And yes, your mother will not visit you during the treatment. Also, be prepared that after the treatment your relationship will be different. You will build it anew and in a different way. Adjust to that," Billy said. Harvey seemed to be thinking about something. He said that he would be gone for a while. When he left, Selena began her conversation again. "Billy, you should be nicer to your father. I've told you all along that he's hurting, but he's actually a very good man. He just can't act the way he wants to when he's sober. When he has a few drinks, he relaxes, and that's the only way he can open up. I've heard that people who quit drinking end up stale and unhappy. So I want him to think about his health too." Selena continued to defend him. "Mom, it's much harder for you to explain the truth than it is for your father. I'm telling you again that by pitying him, you're pushing him to drink. It's hard for you to understand because you hide it all under your care and custody. Please open your eyes and try to see him as an adult who can be there for you, even if you don't save him from his misery," Billy said. The very next day, Billy packed everything he needed for Harvey and took him to a drug treatment center across town. They were met by Billy's longtime friend Arthur. He is listed here as one of the best doctors. After all the formalities were formalized, Arthur invited Billy into his office. "Don't worry about your father. We'll get him out of his addiction in no time. Only you need to be prepared to completely change his attitude towards him." In particular, this applies to closed women. They should think more about themselves and show less maternal care to an adult. Everyone around the former alcoholic must become self-sufficient people. Only when the adult is left to his own devices will he gradually begin to understand his responsibility, Dr. Arthur said. "That's the thing, it's hard for my mom to let him go. Even when we were little, she chose adult care over little kids. I personally doubt she can change, but let's see. If you need anything, call me," Billy said lastly. While Harvey was undergoing treatment, Selena was bored alone. Julia suggested that she contact her friends and invite them on a trip that Billy could pay for. But it turned out that she didn't have any friends. So Selena decided to go to Leslie's house and live with her for a while. She was always resenting her mother for not paying attention to her. Now it was time to have a heart-to-heart talk and make up for lost time. Leslie gladly accepted the decision. That same evening, she took her mother to her house. After a series of failures, Leslie decided to take a break in her zeal to build a new relationship and is now fully committed to work. She is an architect by profession. Recently, on the advice of her brother, she opened her own small company and is actively engaged in its promotion. When Leslie was at work, her mother opened the refrigerator door and found that there was almost nothing edible in there. A couple of bottles with incomprehensible mixtures, a lot of greens, and different spices. Selena decided to really show some motherly concern. She went to the nearest supermarket and bought a lot of different foods. In the evening, a puffy pie with filling and homemade dumplings were ready for Leslie's arrival. Selena hoped that she and her daughter would have dinner together and have heart-to-heart conversations. She had spent the entire day picking up warm words she had never said to her daughter. Let her finally feel loved, she thought. In the evening, looking at the table set, Leslie gave it some thought and declared, "Mom, you go ahead and eat and don't mind me. I prefer a little different food," she said, and started to prepare dinner for herself. By dinner, Leslie meant a couple slices of dark bread, a big mound of chopped vegetables and herbs, drizzled with olive oil. And that was it. Selena was horrified by the whole thing. What kind of food is this? Daughter, you must have seen all those skinny girls who are always dieting and eating nothing but grass. You don't need to lose weight. You already have a great figure. You'd better eat some dumplings, a piece of pie, and in the morning I'll make you some pancakes, Selena said. Mom, what does my figure have to do with it? I have a rare disease that manifests itself as an intolerance to anything containing white flour and dairy products. You just didn't know it before. I gave up pies, dumplings, pancakes, cakes, and everything else for 10 years. If you eat a lot of them, people have an increased tendency to become depressed. I've been down that road. I don't want to go back to it, said Leslie. The dinner together, although it took place, left some residue in the souls of both mother and daughter. The next weekend, Leslie decided to go shopping for her mother. They spent the whole day shopping and choosing outfits. And then it turned out that the tastes of mother and daughter do not coincide. If Leslie suggested something to her mother, she didn't like it. What the mother chose for her daughter did not suit her at all. After a few days, Selena decided to abandon her vain attempts to get closer to her daughter. It turned out that she was already a formed person with her own habits and lifestyle. One more free day, Selena decided to pass with a walk in the nearest park. There she met a woman of her own age with Sarah. The women talked about their fates and families. The next day, Sarah invited Selena to visit. It turned out that she has a son who works as a doctor and takes care of his mother. But his personal life is not getting better, sighed Sarah at the table. I have him quiet and calm, never liked the free way of life, one lover. He falls in love with one girl, and is ready to give his life for her, even if she is a bitch. The last one was a bitch, and she gave him a lot of shit. I don't know what the final straw was, but I guess she betrayed my son. That's it, Sarah said of her son. Selena had a bright idea at that moment. Why not introduce this promising young doctor to Leslie? I wonder how she would feel about that. And Sarah was in favor with both hands. She promised to talk to her son tonight and let Selena know tomorrow. When Leslie came out of her office that evening, she was accosted by some respectable man with a bouquet in his hands. He kept claiming that the flowers were for her. It seemed to Leslie that this was a regular pickup artist who thought he had come up with a very original way to meet a girl. That's why she didn't believe the man's words. My name is Oliver. I work in a private practice as a surgeon. I think you thought I was some kind of a bum who only picks up girls on the street, Oliver smiled. Leslie was a little calmer now, but the flowers for a strange girl continued to embarrass her. Oliver turned out to be a calm but persistent man. He barely managed to convince Leslie to go out for coffee together. It was over coffee that they got to know each other better. At home, Selena waited for her daughter to tell her about the new acquaintance. Of course, she didn't tell her daughter that she was trying to fix her personal life behind her back. She would have taken it in stride anyway. But Leslie didn't tell her mom. Oliver now called and texted Leslie every day. She did not always find time to talk to him, but she did not refuse attention. After a while, Oliver proposed to Leslie to date and call themselves a couple. By this time, Leslie had a very positive image of Oliver in her head, so she agreed. But Leslie didn't tell her mother about it. Selena heard everything from Sarah's lips. She was glad that the mothers had managed to bring their children together. These days, Harvey is being discharged from drug treatment. Selena looked forward to that day. She was almost speechless when she saw her completely changed husband. Instead of a scruffy big egomaniac, a pleasant and tidy gentleman with rosy cheeks stood before her. The family that evening had a traditional dinner together, where Leslie was also present. Everyone was pleased. The next day, when Billy was sitting in his office, he was told that an elderly man had come to see him. He thought it was one of his business partners. He asked to invite the man into his office. A minute later, the office door opened and Harvey walked in. Billy obviously didn't expect such a surprise from his father. "Billy, my son, you will forgive me for almost all my life never taking an interest in your life. And now I see what a decent man you've become through your own efforts. I'm proud of you, son." The father hugged his son. "Dad, let's put the past in the past. At least I've grown up to be a real man." "You just take care of your mom now," Billy said. "That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Son, I'm an old man, and I haven't done anything serious in a long time. That's why I came to you for help. Help me find a suitable job, or at least take me on as a security guard. That's a job I can handle. I promise I won't let you down," Harvey said. Billy liked that idea. His father was healthy now, so he could keep himself busy with some simple labor. Not thinking long, Billy called one of his business partners and he accepted Harvey as a security guard for the production area. Harvey was happy to get to work. Only Selena was different now. She is often moody, sometimes complaining to her son that Julia doesn't love her. Sometimes she cries for no reason. Billy understood that the change in his mother's behavior is due to the fact that now she has no one else to save, and she wasn't used to living for herself. No matter how many hobbies Billy offered, Selena refused. Julia didn't understand it either and tried to find a hobby for her mother-in-law, but it was all in vain. Harvey enthusiastically performed his official duties. He looked forward to the day when he would receive his first paycheck. On his way home and back, he never missed a store to find some original gift for Selena. But Selena was now growing colder to him day by day. On one such day, Selena's recent friend, Sarah, invited them to visit. She had set a fancy table, and Oliver was somewhere passing the time with Leslie. The women cooed about their own things, Harvey tending to them delicately. "Harvey, Don't you think the ladies are getting bored in your company? Why don't you give us a party? Would you please go get a bottle of wine for the ladies? Sarah said coquettishly. Selena perked up and said, "Oh, he'd better not go off on his own after his treatment. Maybe we shouldn't tempt him," she said thoughtfully. "I think Harvey is a man of will. You can see it in his manly look. So Selena, don't worry, your Harvey won't upset you, will he?" Sarah looked at him questioningly. Admittedly, it was the first time Harvey met such an attitude to himself. Sarah immediately put him in a certain position, where he must fulfill the whims of ladies, but himself to remain a man of will. And so it happened. Sarah and Selena drank a bottle of wine for two, and Harvey limited himself to delicate courtship of them. That said, he had not been tempted to join them. Oliver and Leslie, on the other hand, had been going at it these days. Oliver had been swamped with work lately. As a good surgeon, he's in great demand in the medical community. He's often invited for consultations and complex surgeries. These events can last for hours, during which time Oliver is unavailable for calls. After a series of such unavailability, Leslie had the thought in her head that this relationship might not work out either. What she didn't realize was that it was just a shadow of her past that continued to haunt her. The shadow had transformed itself into the image of another woman, and every time, she convinced Leslie that Oliver had another woman on the side that he was devoting his time to. Leslie wanted to tell him her concerns, but she was afraid that he might respond in the affirmative. How could she live with that? So she decided to silently ignore Oliver and try to switch back to her work. Oliver couldn't understand what was going on with her lover. Having experienced betrayal in a previous relationship, he also thought that maybe she had met someone else and couldn't say it directly. So their relationship stopped for a while. But Leslie realized that she was already used to Oliver and she felt good around him. To take away the heartache, now she cries again in the psychologist's office. Thankfully, at least with a psychologist, she was lucky this time that he was able to understand the roots of what was happening. You have no facts and evidence that your young man is going to betray you or has already betrayed you. You were faced with the unknown when he did not return your calls. Where there is uncertainty, there is a shadow of the past in the form of doubt. And in your past, there was no image of trusting the male gender in general. This in girls is usually formed in childhood with the help of a loving and caring father. That's where the roots of your problem are, the psychologist said. Leslie is now finally convinced that this shadow of the past will never let her go. Where will she find this image of trusting relationships and how to download them into her inner world if childhood cannot be returned and her father cannot be remade? The next weekend, Sarah invited Selena and Harvey to her cottage. The friends enjoyed the sun and fresh air during the day. Sarah, as always in her character, she challenged Harvey and made him fulfill petty lady whims. Harvey tried his best to keep a low profile and was successful in all his tasks. The ladies wanted ice cream. He just drove to the neighboring village. In the evening, the ladies got cold, and Harvey had to go around the whole village to get a heater to warm up the house for the night. Selena had been worried about how Harvey would cope with such tasks. Maybe it was worth the inconvenience. She felt a vague resentment towards Sarah. The vacation at the cottage had gone well. It was only on her return that Selena felt unwell. Her blood pressure was high and her heart was racing. The housemates thought it was because of the unusual activity, but the hardest part began at night. She fell into an incomprehensible foggy state, but did not tell the children about it, so as not to disturb them. Toward morning, she decided to go to the kitchen and drink some water, but after taking a couple steps into the living room, she fainted with a rumble. Billy and Julia quickly ran to her aid and called an ambulance. As the ambulance arrived, something strange continued to happen to Selena. Her body grew cold, her eyeballs rolled back, and her face turned dark blue. Billy realized that he was losing his mother in his hands. He went into a panic. Along with them, so did Harvey. Only Julia diligently continued to check her mother-in-law's pulse and perform indirect heart massage. The ambulance barely made it across the threshold of the apartment. The doctor on duty ordered to take the woman to the hospital immediately. An hour later, the doctor informed Billy that Selena had suffered a massive stroke. Now the doctors were fighting to save her life. Billy and Harvey kept watch under the windows of the intensive care unit day and night, but there was no good news. Julia tried to stay close to Leslie and support her. Leslie cried all the time. She had been convinced all her life that there would be beautiful days when she could fully enjoy her mother's love. She'd worked toward it, digging deeper into herself each time with the help of her. Admittedly, it was the first time Harvey met such an attitude to himself. Sarah immediately put him in a certain position, where he must fulfill the whims of ladies, but himself to remain a man of will. And so it happened. Sarah and Selena drank a bottle of wine for two, and Harvey limited himself to delicate courtship of them. That said, he had not been tempted to join them. Oliver and Leslie, on the other hand, had been going at it these days. Oliver had been swamped with work lately. As a good surgeon, he's in great demand in the medical community. He's often invited for consultations and complex surgeries. These events can last for hours, during which time Oliver is unavailable for calls. After a series of such unavailability, Leslie had the thought in her head that this relationship might not work out either. What she didn't realize was that it was just a shadow of her past that continued to haunt her. The shadow had transformed itself into the image of another woman, and every time, she convinced Leslie that Oliver had another woman on the side that he was devoting his time to. Leslie wanted to tell him her concerns, but she was afraid that he might respond in the affirmative. How could she live with that? So she decided to silently ignore Oliver and try to switch back to her work. Oliver couldn't understand what was going on with her lover. Having experienced betrayal in a previous relationship, he also thought that maybe she had met someone else and couldn't say it directly. So their relationship stopped for a while. But Leslie realized that she was already used to Oliver and she felt good around him. To take away the heartache, now she cries again in the psychologist's office. Thankfully, at least with a psychologist, she was lucky this time that he was able to understand the roots of what was happening. You have no facts and evidence that your young man is going to betray you or has already betrayed you. You were faced with the unknown when he did not return your calls. Where there is uncertainty, there is a shadow of the past in the form of doubt. And in your past, there was no image of trusting the male gender in general. This in girls is usually formed in childhood with the help of a loving and caring father. That's where the roots of your problem are, the psychologist said. Leslie is now finally convinced that this shadow of the past will never let her go. Where will she find this image of trusting relationships and how to download them into her inner world if childhood cannot be returned and her father cannot be remade? The next weekend, Sarah invited Selena and Harvey to her cottage. The friends enjoyed the sun and fresh air during the day. Sarah, as always in her character, she challenged Harvey and made him fulfill petty lady whims. Harvey tried his best to keep a low profile and was successful in all his tasks. The ladies wanted ice cream. He just drove to the neighboring village. In the evening, the ladies got cold, and Harvey had to go around the whole village to get a heater to warm up the house for the night. Selena had been worried about how Harvey would cope with such tasks. Maybe it was worth the inconvenience. She felt a vague resentment towards Sarah. The vacation at the cottage had gone well. It was only on her return that Selena felt unwell. Her blood pressure was high and her heart was racing. The housemates thought it was because of the unusual activity, but the hardest part began at night. She fell into an incomprehensible foggy state, but did not tell the children about it, so as not to disturb them. Toward morning, she decided to go to the kitchen and drink some water. But after taking a couple steps into the living room, she fainted with a rumble. Billy and Julia quickly ran to her aid and called an ambulance. As the ambulance arrived, something strange continued to happen to Selena. Her body grew cold, her eyeballs rolled back, and her face turned dark blue. Billy realized that he was losing his mother in his hands. He went into a panic. Along with them, so did Harvey. Only Julia diligently continued to check her mother-in-law's pulse and perform indirect heart massage. The ambulance barely made it across the threshold of the apartment. The doctor on duty ordered to take the woman to the hospital immediately. An hour later, the doctor informed Billy that Selena had suffered a massive stroke. Now the doctors were fighting to save her life. Billy and Harvey kept watch under the windows of the intensive care unit day and night, but there was no good news. Julia tried to stay close to Leslie and support her. Leslie cried all the time. She had been convinced all her life that there would be beautiful days when she could fully enjoy a mother's love. She'd worked toward it, digging deeper into herself each time with the help of a psychologist. She was on her way to finding the strength to forgive her parents for her childhood offenses and finally build a warm adult relationship with them. She realized that without this, she would not be able to achieve personal happiness. Now it turns out that she has no chance to redraw her disfigured childhood picture of the world. 5 days later, the doctor regretfully informed her that Selena could not be saved. She gave her soul to God without ever regaining consciousness. Selena's funeral was held. For Leslie and Billy, their mother's passing was a real blow. While Leslie regretted her unrealized love for her mother, Billy felt guilt for not being able to keep his mother safe. Harvey felt bitterness in his soul, but from all strength kept himself in control, so as not to snap into drunkenness. The real support for the family was Sarah. She had an amazing way of finding the right words for each member of the family. Harvey, hang in there. And don't feel sorry for yourself. Selena has given you the best of herself. You should be a pillar of strength for your children and grandchildren out of gratitude to her. Billy, you've shown yourself to be a model of a decent son. Selena had so many good things to say about you in her lifetime. I am sure her soul is pleased with your care. Don't beat yourself up. Man is not God. He has no power over the life and death of his loved ones. Let your mother go and let her sleep in peace. You've done your duty as a son to the fullest. Leslie, you have your whole life ahead of you. You're gonna have your own family and your own kids, and they're gonna be your outlet. Don't let this grief eat away at your already wounded soul. Let go of your mother and strive for your future. These were the words Sarah spoke to the grief-stricken family members. Turns out, time really does heal everything, and what it doesn't heal, it makes less painful. After a while, Harvey's family began to adjust to life without Selena. Harvey himself continued to work. He wasn't even going back to drinking. Today, he received his paycheck and thought about who of his loved ones would be pleased with what. He liked shopping and the process of choosing something nice for his loved ones. And it was good that he had already managed to buy Selena several times pleasant little things. A purse, a neckerchief, or perfume. True, Selena never used them. Instead of joy, she wailed to her husband, I wish you'd bought something for the grandchildren or for the table. Why do I have to go to all this trouble? You're wasting your money, she said. And when she and Selena visited Sarah or went out together, money flew out of her purse like the wind. She'd order flowers for the table just to make it pretty, and then she'd want music for the atmosphere. Harvey never knew what challenges he would have to take on. Now Harvey remembers those days with warmth in his soul. In the evening after work today, he wanted to surprise Leslie. He bought a box of chocolates at the store and waited for her in the entryway of her apartment. And Leslie was intentionally staying out until midnight tonight. Oliver had been calling her for a few days now, asking to see her. Sarah, of course, told him that Leslie had lost her mother and was heartbroken. She advised her son to stay close to Leslie and try to find a way to approach her. Oliver himself wouldn't mind restoring their relationship, as he'd also realized how used to Leslie he was and didn't want to lose her at all. Only Leslie was being stubborn. She ignored his calls when he came to her office. She asked her assistant to inform Oliver of her absence. Today, Leslie thought it was more likely that Oliver would be guiding her in the driveway. By now, she'd already decided that there was no happy relationship in her life, so there was no point in feeding Oliver false hopes. He was a good man, and it was better to forget her now and start building other, promising relationships with a girl who didn't have such deep childhood traumas. So after work, she gathered all her girlfriends and went to rest. Harvey waited a couple hours, then went home. The next day, he decided to visit Leslie right at the workplace. He had recently seen Billy's office and was extremely city for his son, and Leslie is also developing her own business, and her father has never been interested in the details. Today, he decided to make up for that missing page of his life. When someone knocked on the office door, Leslie was annoyed. She doesn't like to be distracted by the smallest of things. But apparently, her assistant is not in place and will have to accept the unexpected guest. "Come in," Leslie said. "All the more reason for you to come in," Leslie mumbled to herself. She was extremely surprised to see Harvey on the threshold of her office. "Daddy, what are you doing here? How did you find me?" Leslie asked. "And I was just walking down the street and asked passers-by where to find a hard-working girl, Leslie. It turned out everyone knows where Leslie works all day long," said the father. "And who works hard? To him and the candy," said Harvey, and took out of his bag a box of candy. "Dad, you surprise me. Who'd put you up to this?" Leslie could hardly hide her excitement and pleasant surprise. "So who should influence a father to just visit his daughter and make her take a break from work?" said Harvey. "Thanks, Dad. Well, as you can see, this is where my office is. I am the most important person here. I have 4 specialists working under me. We work all day long to turn simple houses and apartments into works of art. Different people come to us and ask us to organize their space so that they're dwelling every day pleasing to their eyes. And we are happy to do it," said Leslie proudly. "Do you get tired of it all, or do you like it?" asked my father. "In general, I really enjoy interior design. That's why I can work 16 or 20 hours a day. That's when I get really tired," Leslie said. "And I'm proud of you, daughter. It takes talent to be able to do this kind of work. And even talent alone is no guarantee. It takes character to achieve something. Then you can count on the realization of talent. And you, I see, have successfully coped with this task. So you have both talent and character. That's why I'm proud of you," Harvey said. "Daddy, thank you. It means a lot to me," said Leslie, not hiding her sincere joy. By this time, she had already eaten one candy after another. "Tell me, what winds brought you here? How are you doing at work?" Leslie asked. "At work I'm fine. Without my close inspection, even a fly does not pass into the protected area. And it is pleasant enough to communicate with very well-mannered and cultured young people of your age," said Harvey. "Well, in fact, I came to you on business. Yesterday, we got our paychecks. I even got a bonus. Today, I decided to do something nice for my daughter," said Harvey, then took his old wallet out of his pocket, took out some bills, and put them in front of Leslie. "Daddy, what are you doing? Keep that money. I make enough," said Leslie. "I know that your brother, earn many times more than me. But I'm your father, and I'm happy to finally realize that. I try to live now in harmony with the voice of my heart, and it conveys to me that my heart wants to show my fatherly love for you in every way," said Harvey. Here Leslie was alarmed, because she remembered the words of the psychologist. She was glad that in time she caught herself in the shadows of her past, and she has time to choose a different approach to the main man of her life. "Exactly. I just needed some money today." "Well, how much is here?" said Leslie, took the money from the table and started counting. Then she turned to her father. "That's not enough. Give me more," said Leslie. Harvey rejoiced, took out his wallet, and pulled out some more bills. "Here you go, daughter. If you need it, I can give you everything. I don't have any special expenses," said Harvey. "All do not need, it is enough," said Leslie, and put all the bills in his wallet. For the rest of the day, she could not concentrate on her work. She was overwhelmed by pleasant experiences that she had never felt before in her life. It was as if a big mountain had grown inside her, where she could run to at any moment and hide from any misfortune. She didn't realize yet that the shadow of the past from her distant childhood had receded and a new image of her caring father had taken its place. But changes in life happen regardless of a person's understanding. A couple days later, she thought about Oliver and their relationship again. Suddenly, she realized how stupid she was being with him. And really, Oliver had given no reason for her to doubt his fidelity. And her habit of believing every thought that came into her head seemed a little strange. She decided to rectify the situation immediately and dialed Oliver's number herself. He was glad to get her call. They met the same day and promised each other to never part again. To fulfill this in practice, they decided to enter into an official marriage. Oliver and Leslie decided to have a modest, no-frills wedding. Immediately after the celebration, they set off on a long journey together. Sarah was a little sad that now she would be all alone, but there was much more joy. After all these exciting events, Harvey felt unwell. For several days now, he had been unable to go to work and was lying at home. At Billy's suggestion to go to the doctor, he refuses. Billy realizes that the grief of losing Selena still continues to torment his father. At a family dinner, which Harvey didn't want to attend, Julia starts a conversation. Harvey needs to unwind. Could it be that his work is wearing him down? Especially since Selena left, he hasn't been himself. "We need to find some recreational activities for him," she said. "What kind of recreation can there be when he's approaching 70? He should just enjoy a vacation, but he doesn't want that either," said Billy. "And we have seen that when Grandpa talks to Grandma Sarah, he becomes cheerful and kind," said Tom, Billy's eldest son. Billy and Julia looked at each other and both froze in thought. Then Mickey decided to speak his mind. "Why shouldn't she be our grandmother? We have no grandmother now, and she has no grandchildren, but she is very kind." Mickey put the question to him. "Well, that's a question Grandma Casey and Grandpa Harvey have to decide for themselves," said Billy. "Dad, you said yourself that grandparents become like children. Maybe they're afraid or embarrassed to tell you. You just suggest it to them, like you suggest us to do something, and maybe they'll like it," Mickey said, and felt incredibly proud of his ingenuity. Instantly, they started laughing together. Julia took that as a good sign. Children can sense everything after all. After this family council, new plans had emerged. Now it was time to get Harvey back on his feet and put them into action. Thankfully, Harvey was on the mend and started going to work again. One day, Billy invited his father to a nearby pub to watch soccer together. When both were in high spirits from the victory of their favorite team, Billy started a conversation. "Dad, don't you think Sarah has a thing for you and you for her?" Billy also put the question in the way his youngest son Mickey knows how to do. Harvey was a little confused and didn't know what to say. It turned out that he himself had not noticed his sympathy for Sarah. She really knows how to cheer him up instantly and always finds the right words. "We've already understood everything and we're happy for you. We'll help you organize a beautiful romantic evening when you tell Sarah your decision," said Billy. Harvey didn't have to think about it much. He was already feeling lonely, and he didn't mind the company of cheerful Sarah. But how could he tell her? What if she took offense? And Selena considered her his friend. Wouldn't that be a betrayal of her memory? He decided to talk to Sarah himself about it. The answer to that, too, was brilliant. "Selena was dear to me, too. If she was still alive, I would be happy for Leslie and Oliver right now. Sadly, she's not among us. But she told me many times how much she loved you and would do anything to make sure you were cared for. I think she was an incredibly strong woman, because not everyone is able to carry her feelings through the hardships of life and protect them no matter what. Yes, sometimes it was hard for your children to understand, but Selena was always devoted to you. I think that now her soul wishes the same thing, that you do not suffer but are cared for. If Celine's spirit gives any sign of that, I wouldn't mind brightening your loneliness, said Sarah. That same night, Sarah had a dream about Celine. In this dream, she was wearing a smart dress and walking through a poppy field. Her face was flooded with light and her eyes were shining with bliss. Suddenly, she walks up to Sarah, pulls out a mysterious talisman and throws it in her direction. He was very dear to me. Take it to yourself and keep it safe. I trust it only to you. With these words, Selena flew away to the heavens. When Sarah woke up, she realized everything correctly, so she would grow old together with Harvey.
Ariana, come to my office for a moment, Harry said into the selector, summoning the secretary to his office. You paged me, Harry? The girl asked, opening the door to the boss's office. Yes, I have an urgent conversation with you, the man answered, going through business documents. Attentively listening to you, replied the secretary, taking out a notebook and a pen to write down everything the chief will say. As you know, this weekend is our company's anniversary. I don't have time to prepare for the party, so you'll have to organize the party. Book a restaurant and send out invitations to business partners. Are there budgetary restrictions or not? Ariana decided to ask. Everything needs to be at a high level, so you don't have any restrictions. It is important that the party is memorable for both the invited guests and our partners, so don't forget to invite a star and find a good host, Harry replied. Okay, will do. Anything else? No, that's all for now. If there are any additional questions or difficulties, you speak up. We'll solve everything. Okay, Harry. I'll look for a restaurant today and make a holiday menu. The secretary replied obediently and went to the waiting room to call elite restaurants in an attempt to book one of them. Hi, is Harry in? A man in a business suit asked, meeting the receptionist in the reception area. Hello, John. Yes, Harry is in the office, replied Ariana, greeting the chief's companion. Great, make us 2 cups of coffee, said John, and headed to the business partner's office to discuss the latest signed contract. Hi, it's good to see you, said Harry, seeing his companion on the doorstep. Hi, do you have a few minutes to discuss the recent contract with the Israeli firm? Yes, of course. Would you like some tea or coffee? I've already told Ariana to make us 2 cups of coffee, John replied. Good. What exactly did you want to discuss about the contract? Harry asked, trying to understand what the business partner and co-owner of the oil company was interested in. Don't you think we're cheap? With the volume we've ordered, the price is usually much higher than what we've contracted for. No, that was the plan. You realize that this is an entry into a new market, and we had to compromise on price to gain the trust of our partners in Israel. They own all the gas stations in the country, and if the cooperation is fruitful, they will increase supplies dozens, if not hundreds of times. As you realize, it will be a whole different order of numbers, and everything will pay off, replied Harry, arguing his decision to his companion. Well, if you can rest assured we will succeed, replied the companion firmly, convincing his partner that he had done the right thing. Okay. But next time keep me informed and warn me about such decisions in advance. Deal. Why don't we talk about leisure time as well as work? Remember that this weekend is our company's 10th anniversary, Harry asked. 10 years already? Oh, how fast time flies. Not so long ago we were just taking our first steps in this business and looking for a reliable partner. And already we've been through so much, said John, remembering the hard way from a novice businessman to an influential oligarch, recognized on every corner. Yes, I can't believe that we are approaching such a milestone. I hope you don't mind that I'm throwing a party to celebrate." "No, you know that I always support good ideas with both hands," replied the companion with a smile on his face. "That's good. By the way, will you be at the event alone or with someone?" Harry asked. "Most likely alone. It hasn't been that long since my divorce, and it was hard enough for me, so I don't plan to start a new relationship in the near future," John replied, remembering his recent divorce from his wife, which had shaken his nerves as well as his wallet. "Yeah, I know. A wife is a constant headache," Harry replied, supporting his companion. "Well, you can't complain. Victoria's a prominent, educated woman," John replied. "That's true," Harry replied thoughtfully, agreeing with his business partner. "Where and when is the gala?" John asked, as he was about to leave. "I don't know yet. I've left it to Ariana to organize. As soon as something becomes clear, I'll call you," Harry replied, and shaking hands with not only his companion, but also his friend, did not delay him. After rummaging through documents and business papers until the evening, Harry didn't notice how another day of work had passed. He left the office and went home after smoking in the parking lot, eating the unpleasant tobacco smell with chewing gum, because he had promised his wife to quit smoking long ago, and had deceived her by telling her that he had kept his word. Upon arriving home, Harry headed straight for the shower to freshen up and finally eradicate any odor that might expose him. "Are you having dinner?" "We're having carbonara tonight," Victoria said as she met her husband coming out of the shower. "Yes, of course. I'll be right there," answered the husband and hurried after his wife. Once in the kitchen, Harry heard the pleasant aroma of hot food and, sitting down on a chair, almost sprawled on it with pleasure, tasting Victoria's next culinary masterpiece. "How was it? I did not overdo it with spices?" asked the wife, hoping to hear praise for her. "It's divine," the husband replied, eating the entire plate before it had a chance to cool. "That's great. Maybe I'll make chicken and shrimp rolls this weekend?" Victoria asked, having read a new recipe. No, why not? It's our company's anniversary this Saturday, so we're going to celebrate at a restaurant. I hope you don't mind," Harry asked his wife. "I don't have anything to wear," Victoria replied, explaining that it was a typical problem for a woman. "Oh well, that doesn't surprise me, but it doesn't scare me. We'll update your closet tomorrow," Harry replied, reassuring and rejoicing his wife. "I love you," Victoria replied happily, hugging and kissing her husband. In the morning, Harry kept his promise and called Ariana to find out the progress of his assignment. Having received the first results, the man called his companion back to say that he would have to work without him today and look after his subordinates, as he had promised his wife a shopping trip and had no right to deny her. Going to the boutiques, the couple bought not only a new evening dress for Victoria, but also put together a complete image, buying exquisite shoes and jewelry, emphasizing the beauty of a woman. A couple of days later comes the long-awaited Saturday, promising a grand party in honor of the company's anniversary. Hurrying his wife, Harry repeatedly calls his business partner and secretary to make sure that everything goes strictly according to his plan. Toward evening, everyone gathers at a restaurant and celebrates the oil company's 10th anniversary, hoping that this is the first, but by no means the last, major anniversary. Harry and John accept congratulations from acquaintances and business partners. All present enjoy the performance of guest artists, dancing, drinking, and having fun. The oligarchs gladly listen to all the wishes, but as soon as they have a couple of free minutes, they do not forget about work and use the opportunity to discuss further plans and prospects of the company. "Maybe I should contact my German partners. They promise to make a good order, but they are still silent," said John, worried about the upcoming deal, after all at stake several $1 million. "This is their business. I think they will contact us soon, and if not, they have more to lose than us. We'll sell it to someone else, because we have a good product and it's in demand," Harry said ironically, realizing that everyone needs oil. I don't know, I wouldn't want to risk it, answered the more pragmatic John, who valued every penny. Don't worry, everything will be fine. On Monday, I will contact the Israeli partners again. I will offer them the same volume at a price a few % lower, and they will be happy to buy everything. Tried to reassure his companion Harry, confident in his strength and ideas. Well, that's not a bad option. John supported his partner's suggestion, realizing that Harry was also very concerned about money and wanted to earn as much as he did. Men, why are you talking about work? Today is a holiday. Let's have a drink. Victoria intervened in the dialogue of partners, offering to raise glasses of champagne to enjoy a party in honor of the business, which they created from scratch. His wife says the right things. Let's talk about business, not today, supported the idea of his wife Harry. Well, your wife is wise. She will not advise badly, agreed John, looking at the wife of the business partner with a smile. Harry paid attention to this and for a moment felt angry, but did not emphasize it. A few minutes later, the men saw the mayor of the city, who had decided to attend their modest party to congratulate the oligarchs. Noticing his appearance, Harry turned his attention away from his wife and companion, heading toward the mayor to greet him personally and accept congratulations. Taking advantage of this moment, John moved a little closer to Victoria to speak to his partner and companion's wife. How are you enjoying the party? John asked. Yes, not bad. I was especially pleased with the choice of restaurant. I love Italian food. I remember when you used to love my mother's hot sandwiches and thought they were the best food in the world, the man said, remembering his childhood. At the time, John and Victoria lived in the same stairwell and attended the same school, so the two of them often went to school together. From 1st grade through 8th grade, they were inseparable until Victoria's family was forced to move downtown. Yes, I really thought so then, Victoria agreed, giving in to pleasant childhood memories. My mom still spoils me with them, John replied, thinking about home for a moment. It's beautiful. How are your parents doing? Victoria asked. They're fine. My mom still runs the restaurant I gave her a couple years ago, and my dad has retired for health reasons. He was in Switzerland recently for rehabilitation, but he's already back home. Say hello to them. Maybe you'll get to see them again sometime, said Victoria, who had always loved John's parents, who treated her like their daughter. I will, John replied, and when he noticed Harry returning to the table, he returned to his seat. After a couple more hours, the party came to its logical conclusion, and everyone began to go home. After saying goodbye to his subordinates and business partner, Harry left the restaurant. How was the party? Did you enjoy it? Harry asked his wife on the way home. Yes, it was great. You know I love this restaurant, so you've pleased me, Victoria replied. To be honest, I didn't choose the venue, Ariana did. She has good taste. Tell her secretary thank you very much for me. Ah, okay. I liked the host and the last musical duo better. There was something special and soulful about their song, Harry said, sharing his impressions of the party with his wife. Yes, I agree. They were very nice and pleasant, agreed his wife, who actually prefers a little different, more colorful and dynamic music. Waking up early Monday morning, Harry headed for a shower and, while Victoria made breakfast, had time to get ready for the office. Having a quick snack and a cup of coffee, the man hurried to work, as a new and no less difficult work week lay ahead, portending not only a lot of money, but also nerves. Arriving at work around 8 in the morning, Harry noticed the companion's car and was surprised that he was already in the office, because usually John did not appear before 9 o'clock, because he had to take his little daughter to school, and it takes time in the morning. Hi, why are you at work so early? Harry asked him in surprise, looking into his companion's office. Hi, I left her at my parents' house to look after her, John replied, telling them that his daughter had a cold. Understood. Let her get better. By the way, this may be a stupid question, but what did you talk to my wife about during the party when I went to greet the mayor? Harry asked suspiciously. Oh, nothing. Just a few words, nothing more, John replied, realizing that he didn't know that he and Victoria had known each other since childhood and lived next door to each other. Look, or I'll be jealous, Harry replied with a serious expression, glaring at his business partner. No need, I don't pretend, and I'll never meddle in someone else's family, John replied, trying to prove that this was indeed an innocent and completely casual conversation. Relax, I'm just kidding, Harry replied, his face changing dramatically and smiling. Oh, you're joking, John exhaled and leaned back in his chair, realizing that his companion was just joking. After talking to his partner, Harry went to his workplace and, without putting things aside, buried himself up to his ears in papers. Several hours passed without any result. Denying himself lunch, the man continued to work, but after an hour, he realized that the efficiency of his work today is extremely low. Deciding not to continue his efforts, which did not produce any results, Harry looked into his partner's office and told John that he would go home early to rest and start work tomorrow with renewed vigor. Victoria arrived at the office a couple of hours later and went up to the second floor and headed for her husband's office. There was no one in the waiting room, and the office was closed, which surprised the woman. Hi, do you know where my husband is? Victoria asked, looking into John's office. Hi, I didn't expect to see you here. Harry went home an hour ago, if not more, the man replied in surprise. That's weird. Did we just miss him or something? Maybe we did. Didn't you ask Ariana if he had a change of plans? John asked, realizing that the secretary was more aware of Harry's plans. Ariana isn't at her desk either, Victoria replied. Well, maybe she went somewhere else on business. In any case, Harry isn't at work because he had an unproductive day and decided it was better to rest. I get it, thanks. Okay, I won't keep you from your work, bye, Victoria replied, and after saying goodbye to John, she left for home. Was what they were saying at the office really true? John asked himself as soon as Victoria left. For months now, he had heard repeatedly from his subordinates that Harry and Ariana were much closer than boss and secretary. Trying not to sink to the level of gossip, John had denied the reality of such a thing. But this time he was beginning to have doubts, realizing that Ariana should be at the workplace, but she wasn't there and apparently had left around the same time as Harry. Deciding that it was better not to speculate but to talk, John pulled out his cell phone and called his companion. Hi, where are you now? John inquired, having reached his business partner. Hi, I told you I was on my way home, Harry replied, surprised to hear such a question from his companion. I remember that. It's just that your wife came to our office just now and was very surprised that you weren't at your workplace. Did she ask about me? What did you say to her? Harry began to ask anxiously, realizing that his deception might have been exposed. Yes, she did, but I told her you two just missed each other. So, why don't you tell me the truth? Well, I'm not exactly home. I've had more important things to do. I hope your personal business has nothing to do with Ariana not being at work either. Mind you, I can't cover for you for long, John replied, alluding to Harry's cheating ways. No, I don't know where she is and what makes you think she would be around? Harry asked in surprise, unaware of the rumors spreading around the office. No reason, I just assumed. Be careful, though, I don't want to fool Victoria. And make up something plausible on the way home, John replied and hung up the phone, distracted by a customer who had entered his office. John called. What does he want from you again? Ariana asked, stroking Harry as she lay in the hotel room bed with him. Yeah, my wife was just at the office. I'm sorry, but we have to get ready, Harry replied to his mistress and stood up from the bed and started looking for his pants. How? You said the room was paid for until morning, replied the disappointed secretary. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. Have you seen my socks? No, I haven't. When are you going to tell Victoria about us? Ariana asked, tired of being the mistress. Soon, I told you it wasn't a good time, answered Harry, who didn't want to change anything in his life. You've been saying that for a year and you've done nothing. If this keeps up, I'm going to find someone else. John divorced his wife and is now completely alone. I can switch to him, said the secretary, trying to blackmail Harry. Calm down, everything will be fine, just not right away. Harry calmed the girl down and went home, letting the secretary stay in the room until morning, since everything was already paid for. On the way home, Harry thought about how best to lie to his wife and which of the options would be more believable. The business trip and work immediately fell away, since his wife realizes he was out of the office, and any business meeting John would be aware of. Other versions seemed less real, and some even fantastical, so they also didn't fit. Pulling up to the driveway, Harry still hadn't come up with anything intelligible that could convince Victoria of his honesty and integrity. Realizing that time was running out and it wasn't worth the delay, the man decided to go home and make up an excuse as he talked. Having gone up to the apartment, he entered and, having taken off his shoes, immediately went to the bathroom to take a shower and wash off the scent of another woman. "Hi, how are you? Victoria asked, meeting her husband coming out of the bathroom. "Hi, sweetheart. I'm fine. I've been traveling on business all day. And how are you doing? Didn't you miss me?" Harry answered calmly, trying not to show that he knew about her visit to the workplace. "I missed you and even decided to come to your office, but you weren't there." "Yeah, I had a couple of people to meet, so I left early." "I'm surprised John didn't know about this. Did your secretary go with you or what?" Victoria asked incredulously, as if she sensed her husband was lying to her. "Ariana, what does she have to do with it? She wasn't in the office either, so I thought maybe you two started traveling together to business meetings." "No, she wasn't feeling well, so I let her go early," Harry replied, continuing to lie to his wife and making up new facts as he went along. "Do you take me for a fool? Tell me, do you have something with her?" Victoria asked, trying to get her husband to come clean. "What? What makes you say that? She's my subordinate and we have nothing." Harry started to deny everything. "Don't lie. I know you're keeping that stupid girl in your office for a reason." "Why stupid? Ariana is a very valuable and helpful person who's been a great help and support to me." "Of course she is. I'm not blind and I saw the way she looked at you at the party. Are you telling me you've never slept with her?" "No, I haven't and I never will. Look me, if I find out that my assumptions are correct, I will file for divorce and claim half of the property," Victoria threatened, hoping that this will scare her husband and he will not risk going to the left. "Don't forget, my affairs are none of your business and you have no right to control me. I'm not cheating on you, but I'm not going to listen to threats either," Harry replied sharply, and realizing that a fight was almost inevitable, went into the bedroom not to continue the conversation. Victoria was also angry, so she did not leave her husband alone, but followed him, continuing to find out about the relationship. "God, I'm so tired of this," Harry said, trying to isolate himself from Victoria, and wrapped himself in a blanket, covering his ears with a pillow. Realizing that her husband couldn't hear or listen to her, the woman decided to leave him alone. Nerves did not allow to calm down and to distract herself from the conflict. Victoria decided to take a walk and get some fresh air. Having collected herself, she went to the playground to sit on a bench and watch the children playing under the supervision of their parents. She loves to spend time here, because only in this way she can calm down and forget about all the problems, dreaming that one day she will also become a mom. Determined to sort out her hunches and set the record straight, Victoria pulled out her cell phone to call John. "Hi, I hope I'm not distracting you," the woman asked, dialing her husband's business partner. "Hi. No, you know very well that I'm always free for you. Can we meet? Is something wrong? You've never called me at this time before," replied surprised John, realizing that it was already evening and Victoria's husband was at home. "You could say that, but we need to meet in person. Can you give me half an hour?" "Yes, of course. Are you home?" Practically. I'll be there in about 15 minutes. You can wait for me at the cafe across the street from your house," John replied, and he kept his word and arrived at the meeting place a little more than 10 minutes later. "So, what's wrong?" John asked anxiously, meeting the wife of his husband, with whom he had been friends and neighbors since he was a child. "I think Harry is cheating on me. I asked him directly about Ariana, but he just got mad. Tell me if I'm getting my hopes up or not." "I don't know. I'm not following your husband," John replied, realizing that he didn't know what to say to Victoria. "We are not the first day we know each other. You cannot lie, and I will not believe that in the office there are no rumors about my husband." "There are, but I'm not used to trusting them, and I don't want to be a gossip columnist. You just tell me about them, and I'll draw my own conclusions," replied Victoria, who hated cheating and betrayal more than anything else. "Rumors about your husband and Ariana have been floating around the office for a long time, but I don't want to believe them. It's a classic story about the chief sleeping with his secretary. But you realize that most of the time it's just gossip and nothing more," John replied, realizing that he couldn't and didn't want to upset Victoria. "I see. Thank you for your honesty. Maybe it's time for you to go home. Harry will be angry. I don't want you to have another scandal over this." "Let's have coffee and I'll go," Victoria agreed, realizing that John was right. After a little chatting and drinking coffee, they left the cafe and went home, saying goodbye. When they returned home, Victoria didn't speak to her husband or start another scandal, realizing that the proceedings needed evidence, not conjecture and assumptions. Harry was also not in the mood for dialogue, and his wife's short absence did not bother him at all, because he was able to calm down and be alone. The next 2 weeks were unremarkable, as Victoria continued to oversee the house and domesticity, buying groceries and all the necessities for their comfortable existence. Meanwhile, Harry focused on work and met with several foreign delegations, signing a couple of ordinary contracts. Another evening dinner began with some unexpected news for Victoria. "The day after tomorrow I have to fly to a conference in London. It will last all weekend, so don't expect me before Monday," Harry said, startling his wife. "London? Why not here?" "They are very important business partners and potential buyers, promising a very good contract, so you need to personally go to meet them and convince them to sign the documents." "Right, well, if you have to do it, you have to do it. Why don't I come with you? Enjoy the vacation, spend some time together. Maybe in some interesting restaurant we'll have dinner or go to the theater," Victoria asked, dreaming at least for a couple of days to go abroad and change the familiar environment. "No, it won't work. I'm not going to rest, but to work, so I'll be very busy, and you'll only get in the way," Harry replied sharply, shattering his wife's dreams and hopes. "Okay, maybe next time then," Victoria replied disappointedly, realizing that she clearly didn't fit into her husband's plans. Closer to the weekend, Harry packed his things for the planned trip, said goodbye to his wife, and headed to the airport. Here Ariana was waiting for him, to whom he had promised a romantic trip to Paris. Lying to his wife about a business trip to London, Harry decided to take a break from Victoria and spend time with his mistress. Flying to the capital of France, lovers are not afraid that someone will notice or expose them, because here the chance to meet someone you know is almost zero. Devoting all his time to the young secretary, Harry spoils Ariana with trips to restaurants, expensive perfumes, jewelry, and other gifts that create an unforgettable vacation in one of the most beautiful cities, not only in Europe, but also in the world. The evening before leaving, Harry decides to surprise Ariana, and sparing no expense, rents the entire restaurant so that the musicians, waiters, and kitchen work only for the two of them. You rented the whole restaurant just for the two of us. You're crazy, Ariana reacted, realizing they were the only guests. Everything is for you, Harry replied with a smile on his face, deciding this way to thank the girl for 2 wonderful days spent next to each other. When I marry you, will you be as sweet and romantic? I think so, but you know I have Victoria, Harry replied, reminding her that he was married. It's that Victoria again. When are you going to leave her? We've discussed this more than once. I told you it's not that simple. If she files for divorce, I could lose part of my fortune, and I don't want that. What's more important to you, me or the money? Ariana asked reproachfully. I love you and of course you are more important than money, but I am not ready to lose half of my fortune. I need to think about the right way to do it, but now is not the right time. I'm tired of being a mistress. All my friends are married, and I'm still single, and I can't tell anyone about our relationship with you. I'm sorry, I understand, but we have to wait a little longer. I'll think of a way to get rid of Victoria and marry you right away, Harry replied, realizing that it was easier to lie and do nothing than to listen to reproaches from the young mistress. There's no time to wait, it's time to act. I'm pregnant, and I'm not going to give birth without my husband. If you don't talk to your wife soon and tell her about us, I'll do it myself, Ariana replied, realizing that she can't delay and she doesn't want to be a single mother. Are you pregnant? Is it true, or are you checking me on purpose? Harry asked suspiciously, a little distrustful of his mistress and thinking that she was using this fact for blackmail. True, the girl answered firmly, taking out a positive test and a certificate from the gynecologist from her purse. It can't be, Harry replied, shocked. I've been pregnant for a month and it's no joke. You haven't had a baby in 10 years, and we're having a baby in less than 8 months. I hope this is a good enough reason to talk to your wife and put an end to your relationship, asked the mistress, realizing that used the main trump card. Yes, it is. I'll definitely talk to her, Harry replied, and happy that he was going to be a daddy soon, began to hug and kiss the secretary. At the same time, he felt that this news could ruin his life, jeopardizing his family, but it was too late to change or fix anything. The next morning, Harry and Ariana returned to their homeland. The man, making excuses for small problems at work, returns in a downcast mood and on the plane does not talk to his secretary, as he does not know what else to say, and he does not want to discuss yesterday's news. Arriving at the airport, Harry takes a cab and sends Ariana home. After a bit of thinking and smoking on the way to the parking lot, the man realized that he needed someone to talk to, ask for advice and figure out how to proceed. Trusting only one person, Harry decided to call his companion and faithful comrade, who had been helping him in all difficult situations for 10 years. Hi, how are things going at the office? Hi, yes, everything is fine. Yesterday we had guests from Austria. We discussed a potential deal. I took them to a restaurant. I think everyone is happy, and in a couple of weeks we will sign another contract. Where have you been? Asked John, who had called Harry a couple of times, but he hadn't answered. Oh, I can't tell you in a nutshell. How about we get together and talk? Sure, come to the office, or you can come over to my house tonight. Let's do it in an hour at the bar near the office, where we often relax, Harry suggested, feeling an irresistible desire for a drink. All right, I'll try to be there, John replied, and having finished all his work, went to meet his companion. Once in the bar, he noticed Harry sitting alone at the far table with a bottle of white wine. What are you drinking? It's only lunchtime and you're already having trouble sitting down. I just don't know how to get it all into my head, Harry replied, taking another drink. What are you talking about? John asked, waiting for more details. Ariana is my lover, Harry said, deciding to start with the main point. Well, you didn't surprise me with that. I've heard those rumors in the office for a long time, though I tried not to believe them until recently. That's not the most important thing. This weekend we spent with her in Paris. I decided to arrange a romantic vacation, but what she told me last night turned the usual world upside down. So, what happened? She's pregnant, Harry admitted, tipping back another shot. Yeah, that's quite a story. What are you going to do about it? John asked, realizing that the situation called for action. I don't know. Ariana is demanding that I make choices because she doesn't want to be a single mom. I don't think you should rush into this because you and Victoria have been together for 10 years, and that's no joke. Think about whether you should ruin your family and your life for the sake of a stupid and young mistress who only wants money from you, John said, hoping that his friend would get wise and act like a family man trying to save the relationship. You don't understand. If I don't make a choice in favor of Ariana soon, she will tell my wife everything. Can you imagine the uproar that would cause? Yeah, I can imagine. In that case, I'd advise you to tell Victoria yourself. It's much better that way. It'll hurt her anyway, but you better do it in person. If she finds out from her mistress, you'll be in trouble. I understand, but I'm afraid to tell the truth because I know my wife's character, Harry replied, anticipating Victoria's reaction. I could talk to her myself, but that's not a good idea, so take matters into your own hands before it's too late. Okay, I hear you. Thank you for listening, Harry replied, thanking his friend and ordering another bottle of white water to drink with him. After sitting in the bar until late in the evening, the men had a good rest and, having a few too many drinks, completely forgot about work and problems. Seeing a few missed calls on his phone, Harry realized that it was time to go home because his wife realized that he had returned to his homeland and was very nervous. Saying goodbye to his friend and taking a cab, the man went home and, thanks to alcohol, lost his fear of his wife. On the way, he worked out several variants of dialogue, having no doubt that he will tell his wife about everything immediately upon his return. When he got up to the apartment and struggled to get the key into the keyhole, Harry met Victoria on the doorstep, who had come to the door because of a strange noise in the stairwell. "Are you drunk?" Victoria asked from the doorway, smelling the strong odor of alcohol. "Yeah, sorry. I met John and had a few too many drinks while discussing work," Harry replied, forgetting all the versions of the dialogue he'd worked out on the way home. "I see. Well, it's no big deal," his wife said understandingly. "Thank you for not yelling at me," the husband replied in a calm tone, and taking off his outer clothes, wandered into the bedroom to fall on the bed. "Can you tell me how you went? How did the negotiations go? Did you get anything or not?" Victoria asked, trying to find out something about her husband's business trip. Harry answered dryly and fell asleep almost instantly, snoring heavily. Realizing that there was no point in disturbing her husband, Victoria collected her husband's things and, having returned to the hallway, hung his coat on the hangers, as suddenly airline tickets fell out of her pocket. Picking them up, the woman was shocked by what she saw. It turned out that the airline tickets were bought not to London, but to Paris. Moreover, her husband was flying on a business trip not alone, but with his secretary. Angry, Victoria wanted to find out why Harry had deceived her, but after trying to wake him up, she realized that it would not work and decided to wait until morning. Waking up early in the morning, Victoria went to the bathroom. Taking a shower, she didn't let the thought of her husband being in Paris with his secretary out of her mind for a minute without telling her the day before. Having thought of a lot of unnecessary things, the woman decided that it would be easier to wait until her husband woke up and talked to him about everything. At least somehow distracting herself from it, Victoria started breakfast and, having prepared a couple of dishes, forgot about airline tickets for a few minutes. When she heard that her husband was already awake, she called him to the table and took the tickets out of the drawer and waited impatiently for him to sit down at the table. "Good morning, my love. How are you going to explain this to me?" Victoria asked, throwing the airline tickets on the table. "What do I have to explain?" Harry asked with incomprehension, feeling very hungover and with a terrible headache. "Why did you say you were going to London, but you were in Paris, and not alone, but with your secretary?" "There's been a change of plans, and she's my assistant," was the first thing that came to mind. "Are you trying to make a fool out of me? Why didn't you tell me that right away?" Victoria continued to press her husband, realizing that he might be lying. "Look, what business is it of yours? Why are you going through my pockets and interrogating me? Have I given you any reason not to trust me?" Harry shouted back, tired of the constant questioning and reproachful behavior. "I'm your wife and I have the right to know who you're traveling with and where you're going," Victoria replied, also raising her voice. "Got it," shouted Harry and, banging his hand on the table, went to the bedroom. Quickly collecting himself, the man, without a word, flew out of the apartment like a champagne cork and, getting into the car, left for work. As soon as her husband left, Victoria wanted to run after him, but realized that it would not bring results. Left at home all alone, the woman could not find a place for herself. Waving for most of the day, she called her husband several times to try to talk again, but he never answered her calls. Realizing that it is impossible to let the situation go, and it is necessary to understand what happened, Victoria decides to go to the office and talk, but not with her husband, but with Ariana, finding out everything about their business trip to Paris. Once in the office and up to her husband's office, Victoria walks into the reception area, and seeing the receptionist, walks up to her. "Hello, Ariana. Can you spare me a few minutes?" "Hello. Yes, of course," the girl replied politely. "Can you explain to me why you went to Paris with my husband?" Victoria asked, starting with the most important thing. "Didn't he say anything to you?" "No, he got angry and left for work, so I would like to discuss this situation with you." "Well, since he still hasn't made up his mind, I'll tell you everything myself," said the secretary, switching to you. "Interesting," Victoria replied, intrigued, realizing that she was about to learn a lot of new things. "Harry and I are lovers, and we love each other. He hasn't known how to tell you for a year now that he's sick of you. I'm beautiful, young, and always there for him, unlike you," Ariana blurted out, realizing that Harry would never dare tell his wife. "I guessed, so you didn't surprise me. The only thing you miscalculated is that he loves me and will never leave me. You're just another toy for him to use and leave," Victoria said, trying to crush the hopes and expectations of her husband's mistress. "I don't think so. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about, so pack your things and get out of here while your legs are still intact. You should quit your job and run as far and as fast as you can, or you'll regret it," Victoria said threateningly, determined to put her mistress in her place. "I don't think so. I'm not going to quit because I'm expecting Harry's baby, and you're the one who has to get out of his life once and for all." "What do you mean pregnant?" Victoria asked, shocked, not expecting such a truth. "Yes, I'm pregnant, a month pregnant. Unlike you, I'll be able to make him happy with children, so don't get in the way," Ariana replied, determined to hurt the woman with the lack of children. Hearing the screams in the waiting room, Harry finished the video conversation with his Israeli colleagues and, coming out of the office, saw his wife and mistress, clarifying the relationship between each other. Trying to resolve the conflict, the man tried to calm the women, but Ariana broke up not on a joke, and feeling that she has an advantage over Victoria, who did not give Harry a child for 10 years of marriage, began to insult her in every possible way. At the noise in the reception area, the office staff came running and, mouths open, watched the conflict between the two women, unable to divide their boss. "Can't you see that this young hussy is targeting your money, and she's only interested in you because you're an oligarch?" Victoria asked her husband. Oh, one would think that you live with him because you love him," replied Ariana. only confirming Victoria's words. "Well, there you go. Are you going to live with this miracle?" Victoria continued to ask her husband, emphasizing the answer of his young mistress. "Calm down, let's talk about it at home," Harry replied, trying to calm his spouse. "Why? Let's now tell her that you are divorcing, and you don't need her anymore." Ariana got into the dialogue, demanding that Harry make a choice in her favor. "Don't get too excited about him being an oligarch. We've lived together for 10 years, and everything Harry owns is jointly acquired. I'm not talking about the fact that the company was started by my late father," Victoria replied, deciding to put the mistress in her place and remind her husband, thanks to what and who he became a respected rich man. "So, quickly into the study," said Harry, boiling with rage. Grabbing his wife by the shoulders and pushing her into his office, the man closed the door so she wouldn't break out. "What are you looking at? Who wants to look for a new workplace? Quickly disperse to their workplaces. The concert is over," shouted the man and went into the office after his wife. "So what is all this called?" Victoria asked, left alone with her husband. "Calm down. Wait half an hour until I finish all the business, and we'll go to some restaurant. We'll talk about everything calmly over dinner, and I'll explain everything to you," Harry replied, hoping his wife would calm down. "Okay, you've got half an hour," Victoria replied, determined to make sense of the situation. "I'll be out in a minute," Harry said, heading out of the office. "To Ariana's, right?" his wife asked wryly, but the man decided it would be easier to ignore the question. "So you won't be here in 10 minutes, said the man to the secretary as he walked out into the reception area. He realized that if his wife and mistress came face to face again, there would be no way to stop the scandal. Determined to avoid returning to his office, he finished his work and, putting all the documents aside, began to pack, reminding his wife that they had agreed to have dinner at a restaurant and discuss everything quietly. Getting into the car, Victoria tried to restrain herself and wait for the promised dinner, but at some point she realized that resentment stiffened her chest and anger covered her mind. "Explain to me, how could you? Is she any better than me? Are you starting again? Why don't we go to the restaurant and talk about it? No, let's deal with this now. Do you really want that stupid secretary? Are you sure that the baby is yours and not someone else's?" Victoria continued to scandalize, trying to vent all the anger and emotions eating her up inside. "I was just bored and wanted to have some fun. I didn't think it would go this far," Harry replied, trying to justify cheating. "You got bored? All right, I get your point. Keep in mind that you and John have not only your savings in the company, but also my late parents' money. So when we split up, we'll be dividing not only the assets, but the business as well. I have no claim on the company itself, so you'll compensate me financially. I don't have that kind of money. You know that I invest everything in further development and prosperity. That's your problem. You should have fought with your head before, not with what's between your legs. Look, why do you need so much money when you have no one? I have Ariana, the baby's coming, but why do you need it?" Harry asked, realizing that it was unlikely that they would be able to reconcile with his wife. "That's none of your business. If you don't want to do it nicely, I'll hire the best lawyers, and they'll take away everything and leave you with nothing." Hearing these words from Victoria's lips, the furious man turned sharply into the alley, increasing the speed of movement. "What are you doing? Where are we going?" Victoria asked fearfully, but did not get an answer from her husband, who decided not to explain anything to her. 15 minutes later, they were outside the city. Looking at her angry husband, the woman realized that he was up to no good, but she couldn't imagine what he was up to. At some point, without stopping, Harry opens the passenger door of the car and pushes his wife out of the car at full throttle to the dumpster to the bums. Not caring what happened to his wife, the man turns around and drives away. Victoria, who flew out of the car, hit her head hard against the pavement during the fall and lost consciousness. Arriving home, Harry decided to get drunk, to forget for a few moments about what happened and turn off the mind demanding to go back and help his wife. Having drowned out his sense of conscience with a whitewash, the man fell lonely asleep in bed without taking off his clothes. Waking up to a phone call, Harry saw that it was 8 in the morning and he was late for work. After talking to his subordinate and giving him his orders, the oligarch drank his coffee and went to the office. Without a word to Ariana, Harry went into his office and, buried up to his ears in business papers, tried to somehow forget about all the problems that had fallen on his head. "Hi, were you drinking last night? You don't look so good," John said as he looked into his business partner's office and saw Harry looking disheveled and black-eyed. "Yeah, he'd been drinking, so what?" "Nothing to me, but what's Victoria going to say about it? She's not gonna tell me anything." "Yeah, right. Why don't you tell me about what happened here yesterday? The whole office is up in arms about last night's scandal." As I understood from the words of the subordinates, Victoria knows that Ariana is your lover and her pregnancy is not a secret for her. John asked, having heard the morning gossip. "Yes, that's right. And what did she tell you about it? Did she file for divorce, or were you able to find common ground and calm her down?" "It's okay. We worked it out and there's no problem. This morning, she flew to Spain for a vacation, and I think that when she gets back, we'll be able to settle the conflict," Harry lied, trying not to tell his comrade what happened yesterday after work. "I see. That's good," John replied, and without distracting the oligarch, he went to his office. Not fully believing Harry's story, the man decided to call an old acquaintance, but could not get through to her because Victoria did not answer the phone. When she wakes up, Victoria looks around and notices several strange men, whose clothes she can guess from their clothes that they are homeless. The woman wonders what she's doing here and doesn't remember how she ended up in the dump in the middle of the people who live here. Trying to get up, Victoria feels a hellish pain in her head and, grabbing it, notices traces of blood on her hands. Scared even more, she loses consciousness again. The frightened homeless people did not know how to help the unfortunate woman and called an acquaintance to help and talk to her. Coming to her senses, Victoria saw a pretty woman in front of her, dressed no better than the homeless people standing behind her. "What am I doing here? Who are you?" she asked, trying to figure out what was going on. "Calm down, you are in no danger. My name is Angelica. I found you last night in the neighborhood with a broken head," answered a woman of no fixed abode, trying to calm Victoria down. "I don't remember anything at all," replied Victoria, who had suffered a severe blow to the head. "It must be a consequence of the trauma. Don't worry, you will soon remember everything," replied Angelica, trying to support her new acquaintance. "I feel sick and hungry," said Victoria, who hadn't eaten for almost 24 hours and clutched her stomach, feeling painful cramps. "Don't worry, we will solve this problem now," answered a beggar woman about the same age as Victoria. These words turned out to be more than just an encouragement, because after a minute she brought a whole bag of groceries and started pulling out cookies, fruit, and other goodies, and decided to feed Victoria. I don't feel comfortable eating you," modestly replied the well-dressed woman, realizing that homeless people don't have extra money. "Don't worry, I bought them with your money, which I found in your purse. I hope you won't be mad at me for that." No. I'm very grateful to you." "That's good," Angelica replied and sat down next to Victoria and decided to eat too. Noticing that the men standing nearby continued to stare at her, Victoria was embarrassed. "Don't be shy either. Come on over. There's enough food for everyone," she said, calling the two men closer to her. "Thank you. You're very kind," one of them replied and sat down next to the women and took a stick of sausage to make a feast for the stomach. "By the way, you said you found money in my purse, but the cell phone wasn't there," Victoria asked, hoping he would help her remember things sooner. "No, it wasn't there, honestly," Julia replied. "I believe you." Victoria replied disappointedly. Realizing that she did not know where to go, the woman decided to stay here and live with Angelica and other homeless people who lived in the dump by day and at night slept in a dilapidated house nearby. Constantly communicating with Angelica, Archie, and Frederick, Victoria realized that homelessness is not a sentence because despite the lack of housing, they have retained their humanity and can be more interesting conversationalists than wealthy and self-confident people. So unnoticeably, she became attached to the homeless people who helped her and took her in their so-called house. Trying to save the remaining money, Victoria learns to search and get food on an equal footing with everyone else because she doesn't want to stand out and is ready to do dirty work just to help her new friends. Soon, it began to get colder outside as winter was getting closer. One night, Victoria came back tired and couldn't sleep because she was very cold. Hearing that her friend was shaking like a dog's tail, Angelica came to her and took off her jacket and gave it to Victoria. "You what?" "I won't take it." The trembling woman tried to refuse, realizing that she was uncomfortable accepting such a gift. "Don't worry, I have a warm sweater, so I won't freeze," Julia replied, reassuring her friend. "Thank you very much," Victoria replied, taking the jacket and wrapping herself in it. Once she was warm, she fell asleep like a baby. Adapting to life in the abandoned house, Victoria helps Angelica in every possible way, and while she goes out to get groceries, tiddies up a little to make their conditions a little better. A week passes unnoticed, during which the women become very close and even become friends. When Angelica returns from another attempt to earn some money, she brings bags of food to the abandoned house. As she starts pulling out the containers, she greatly surprises Victoria, who was expecting more modest loot. "Wow, did you rob a restaurant?" Victoria asks in surprise. "Practically," Julia answered jokingly. "And if seriously?" Victoria asked, a little scared, afraid that her friend had broken the law. "Don't worry, I earned it all. Today I helped in a restaurant on the outskirts of the city and took out bags with garbage and other waste. The chef gave me the leftovers in gratitude, so today we have a feast," Angelica replied, explaining where such riches came from. Rejoicing at the abundance of food, Victoria cleared a corner to set up a small clearing to have dinner. Realizing that they have become close enough, the woman decides to ask Angelica how she ended up at the city dump. "I'm sorry if I'm getting personal, but why don't you tell me what happened in your life and how you got here? Are you really interested?" "Yes, I am. 5 years ago, I had everything a woman could dream of: a good and loving husband, a wonderful son, and caring parents. Everything changed one day when I found out that my husband betrayed me. He raised his hand against me, but that wasn't the worst part." "Oh God, what happened to you?" With horror in her voice asked Victoria, realizing that this is only the beginning of the story. "Having betrayed me, my husband not only left me, but also took away my child. I tried to sue and get some justice, but he took my son abroad, saying that I will never see him again. I got addicted to the bottle and lost everything: a good job, friends, and my apartment, which was taken away from me for debts. It was shameful to return to my parents after such a disgrace, and continuing to drink, I ended up on the street. Trying to survive, I kept my fighting character and managed to control myself, but a ridiculous fight led me to the fact that I found myself behind bars and spent several years in prison. Once I was out again, I tried to get a job and get my life together, but it didn't work out, and I had to go back to living on the streets. Yeah, it's awful, especially for a child. Unfortunately, I don't have children," Victoria replied sadly, sympathizing with her friend. "Did you remember that?" Julia asked in surprise, realizing that her friend had suffered short-term memory loss after the trauma. "I think I did," Victoria said, even more saddened. "Why don't you tell me what happened to you and how you got to the point where your husband threw you out of the car?" "My husband is a well-known oligarch in the city. who created a large oil company. It seemed to me that my life was like a fairy tale because I had everything, but over time I realized how wrong I was. We had no children, and maybe that's what caused Harry to cheat on me. He had an affair with his young secretary, and just before I was here, she revealed that she was pregnant. The quarrel jeopardized our family life, and trying to somehow save the family, I decided to scare my husband, saying that I would take away everything from him, because the business he built not only at the expense of his savings, but also at the expense of my parents' money. As it turned out, I made a big mistake, because he loves money much more than he loves me. Having made a choice in favor of the company and a pregnant mistress, he threw me to the dump, hoping that here I will go to the other world. Yes, another traitor who decided to throw his wife away as soon as he got tired of her. Julia sadly commented on her friend's story, realizing that her family life was no better. Unfortunately, it happens, Victoria replied, finally remembering everything. What are you going to do now? I don't know. I haven't thought about it yet. Maybe I'll say something stupid, but I advise you to keep quiet about it for the time being, not to say anything to anyone. You do realize that your husband openly wanted to get rid of you, and if he finds out that you are safe and sound, he can finish what he started and finish you off. Yes, I realize that. Perhaps you are right, Victoria agreed, realizing that her husband is ready for extreme measures to preserve and continue the development of the oil empire. Soon it was completely dark outside, and as the two best friends continued their dialogue, the women heard the approaching sounds of two homeless men returning to the abandoned house. Archie and Frederick were tipsy and actively arguing with each other, trying to divide a bottle of white wine. Without a moment's silence, the men went upstairs. Their quarrel continued for a few hours, but then they somehow calmed down, apparently having figured out how to divide the white wine. Realizing that they could rest, the women wrapped themselves in an old blanket found at the dump and fell asleep. A couple hours later, Victoria wakes up to suffocation and loud screams. When she opens her eyes, she sees a fire and hears the terrible noise of cars with sirens blasting her head with their shrill howls. Feeling herself being dragged somewhere, Victoria looked to the side and saw two men in rescuers' uniforms trying to pull her out from under a wooden floor beam. After pulling the woman out of the burning house, the firefighters continued their work and returned to the source of the fire, trying to extinguish it. "Don't worry, the ambulance will be here in a few minutes," said a man in a police uniform who approached Victoria. "What happened?" asked the shocked woman. "I wanted to ask you the exact same question. Maybe you can remember something or tell me something so that I can find out the cause of the fire," replied the policeman. "Where is my friend? Where is Angelica?" Victoria became hysterical, realizing that her friend was nowhere to be found. "Unfortunately, I have to inform you that your friend is no longer here. We found the body of a woman next to you, and we were unable to save her. Apparently, during the fire, the burning floor joist fell down, covering you with it." "It can't be." Victoria began to cry, refusing to believe in the reality of what was happening. At one point she tried to move, but when she felt a sharp pain in her leg, she lay back down. "Careful, don't move. You have suffered burns and a broken leg as a result of the fall of the beam, so you should not move." "Your friend was even less fortunate, because the beam fell on her head," the policeman said with sympathy in his voice. A few minutes later, the fireman who had extinguished the fire approached the policeman and told him that the fire was on the second floor, where they had found two more bodies. Victoria realized that it was the drunken antics of homeless people, long unable to divide a bottle of white wine, but decided not to talk about it, because it would not change anything. Soon an ambulance arrived on the scene and, having given Victoria first aid, loaded her into the car. On the way to the city hospital, the woman tries to say something, but, feeling pain, loses consciousness. "Hello, glad you're still with us," greeted Victoria, who woke up in the hospital, the doctor. "Hello, are you a doctor?" the woman asked, remembering everything that had happened to her the day before. That's right. My name is Steve. How are you feeling, Julia? The man asked, worried about his patient's condition. How do you know my name? Victoria asked in surprise, deciding not to give herself away for the time being, heeding her friend's advice. When you were brought to the hospital, we had to look through your things and check your pockets. In your jacket, we found a certificate of release from a place of detention, the doctor replied, explaining how he had recognized her name. I see. You'll excuse me, but I'm not feeling well and would like to rest, Victoria said, wishing to be alone with her thoughts, to think about the plan of further actions and to buy time for it. A couple hours later, a young nurse came into the woman's room to check on her condition and help her if needed. After getting to know the nurse and realizing she was a nice girl, Victoria decided to ask for her phone for a couple of minutes to make a call. The conversation is confidential, so she asked the nurse to step out so she could talk quietly. Hi, John. We need to meet urgently and talk, said Victoria, getting through to her husband's companion and old friend. Hi, haven't heard from you in a while. How was your vacation in Spain? What's Spain? John, can you hear me? I need to see you. Well, Harry told me you went on vacation and decided to stay there for a while. Where and when can we meet? Replied a surprised John, not expecting a call from Victoria. I'm at the First City Hospital. I'm sorry, but I can't talk long, as I'm calling from someone else's phone, and I'll tell you everything when I meet you. Okay, I'll be there in half an hour, the man replied confusedly, realizing that the woman was not all right. Oh yes, one more thing. Ask not Victoria, but Julia, Victoria finally said, hanging up the phone as a nurse and a doctor came into her room. After seeing the doctor, the woman thanked the nurse for her help and returned the phone. Soon, John shows up at the hospital and, heeding the woman's advice, asks for Julia. Once in the room, he saw Victoria with a plastered leg and was shocked at the state she was in. What happened to you? How did you get here? And why does everyone here think you're Julia? John began to ask, trying to make sense of what was going on. Wait, not all at once. In order for you to understand everything, I'll have to tell you from the beginning, Victoria answered, realizing that she was waiting for a long and not the most pleasant for her story. Okay, I'm listening attentively, John replied, and took a chair and sat down close to Victoria. The day before I disappeared, I came to the office to talk to Ariana. As a result of the argument, I found out she was pregnant and threatened my husband that I would take everything away from him if he risked trading me for a young mistress. He was afraid, but not for our marriage, but for his financial situation and, deciding that it is easier to get rid of the interfering spouse, threw me to the dump to the homeless. Fortunately, there are kind people there who took me out, gave me food and a roof over my head. Despite the total poverty, it seemed that life was getting better. But then I, recovering from a brain injury, began to remember everything. That same night there was a terrible fire, as a result of which my friend went to the other world. And in my jacket were her documents, and everyone mistook me for her. Realizing Harry might be after me, I decided to use Julia's name as a cover. I never would have believed that could happen, especially with people I've known for years. I can see where and why you disappeared in such a hurry. Yeah, well, as you know, I didn't plan it. Why didn't you call me sooner? John asked, knowing he could have helped his old friend. I had a memory problem, and I didn't have my phone. It was left in Victoria, and giving her hope that things would soon change for the better. Victoria spends the next few weeks in the hospital recovering from her injuries and burns. John pays for the treatment, brings food and clothes, buys a cell phone with a new number to stay in touch, and, heeding Victoria's request, picks up the release certificate and works on restoring the documents in Julia's name. Once the paperwork is ready, John arrives at the hospital and picks Victoria up. The first thing the woman asks is to go to the place where she's been living lately. to see the burned-out house with her own eyes, and after being there for a few minutes, to say goodbye to Angelica. "How would you like to stay at my parents' house in the country? I'm sure they'd love to have you over," John said, inviting Victoria to his parents' country home. "Are you sure it's convenient?" Victoria asked, embarrassed, because she didn't want to be inconvenienced. "Yes, more than comfortable. Don't worry, I've already talked to them and basically warned them about it in advance, so there won't be any problems," John reassured the woman and, offering her to get back into the car, went to the country house. "Hello, Victoria. It's good to see you in our house," John's mother greeted the guest. "Hello, Lucy. I'm very glad to meet you too," Victoria replied, hugging the lovely woman tightly. "Oh, what guests? We've been expecting you," said John's father, also hugging Victoria. "Hello, Barry. Thank you. It's my pleasure." "Oh, who's so little and pretty?" Victoria asked, noticing a little girl behind the couple. "I'm not little. I'm already 7 years old. My name is Samantha," replied the little girl as she introduced herself to Victoria. "Hello, Samantha, and my name is Victoria. Nice to meet you. You are very pretty," said Samantha, complimenting her new acquaintance. "Thank you. You are very pretty too, and you remind me of your father as a child," said Victoria, looking at John and seeing that she and Samantha had a lot in common. "Well, since everything is fine, I won't interrupt you and I'll be on my way. I need to get back to work since Harry is being very careless right now," John replied, and after saying goodbye to his family and Victoria, he left for the office. On the way, he thought about how to deal with the problems that had accumulated, realizing that he could no longer count on and trust his business partner the way he used to. Not only had he been so mean to Victoria, but all of Harry's thoughts were occupied with a pregnant Ariana, preventing him from concentrating on his work. At the same time, John's parents warmly welcomed Victoria and gave her a separate bedroom on the second floor. Deciding to organize a small celebration, his parents prepared dinner and sent Samantha to Victoria to invite her to the table. "Grandfather and grandmother call you to the table," said the girl, knocking and looking into the guest's bedroom. "Okay, I'll be right there," Victoria replied, and after writing a thank you text message to John, she hurried into the kitchen after Samantha. "John said you are having some problems with your husband. We won't get involved, as it's none of our business, but we hope that everything will be resolved in a positive way soon," John's father said, trying to support Victoria. "Thank you, it's my pleasure. Yes, I think everything will be fine soon," Victoria agreed. I remember how you and John used to fool around at our house. It was a wonderful time," the man's mother recalled. "Yes, I completely agree with you. Our childhood was wonderful," Victoria replied, remembering how much time she'd spent with John and even dreaming that their friendship would lead to something more. "And I miss your parents the most. Anthony and Emma Grigorievna were wonderful people. It was a pity that they were gone so early." The head of the family supported the conversation, remembering Victoria's parents. "Yes, they taught me a lot, and it's a pity that this catastrophe, which happened 8 years ago, took their lives," Victoria replied with bitterness in her voice, still missing her parents. At some moments she missed them especially, because her mother could always listen and support her, give her sound advice, and her father would not leave her in trouble and would do anything to see a smile on her daughter's face. Continuing to give in to memories, parents John and Victoria did not notice how quickly the time flew by. At the same time, little Samantha was running around the table and, tired, sat in Victoria's arms and hugged her tightly, showing her affection for the woman. Noticing that the little girl was dozing off, Victoria did not wake her, but took her into the bedroom and put her in her crib. The next weekend, John visits his parents and brings gifts for his daughter. After spending time with his daughter, who he doesn't get to see as often as he would like because of his busy work, he spends a few hours with Samantha, playing board games and learning about her progress at school. After dinner, after putting the little girl to bed, John heads to Victoria's bedroom, realizing that they need to talk. "Can I come in?" the man asks, knocking on Victoria's bedroom door. "Sure, come on in. How are you doing here? Are your parents treating you well?" "Yes, everything is just fine. I miss them very much, and I have already forgotten what attention and care means. Besides, I've been spending time with Samantha, and she's a great girl, and she doesn't let me get bored." "Yeah, she can do that. Did you want to talk to me about something?" Victoria asked, realizing that John had stopped by for a reason. "Yes, I wanted to talk about what's going on at the company and Harry's life. Things haven't been going well lately, and he's been showing up less and less to work, and he's been blatantly neglecting important meetings and negotiations. I'm trying to keep the company going as much as I can, but there's just not enough time. Ariana's driving him crazy, I think." "Well, it's his choice. It's what he wanted, so he can't complain now," Victoria replied without a trace of sympathy in her voice. After a little more talking, John notices that it's too late and goes back to his room. In the morning, waking up earlier than the others because of a phone call from the office, the man has a cup of coffee and hugging his mother tightly and asking her not to tell anyone that Victoria is staying with them, went to work. A couple weeks later, he arrives at his parents' home again, bringing candy, toys, and other gifts, not only for Samantha, but for the whole family, not forgetting Victoria as well. Once again secluded in the bedroom, John and Victoria discuss another event in Harry's life. He finally stopped coming to the office after their recent fight. What on earth had happened between them? Ariana constantly asked for money, demanded to buy her something, and Harry refused. Everyone heard them fighting, including me. I think he regretted his actions, but he had no choice because Ariana was about to give birth, and they spent all their time in the hospital preparing for the upcoming birth. Yeah, well, that's a lot of work. I haven't even mentioned the fact that he took a month off to be near Ariana and see the birth of his daughter. Well, that's his right, and you'll definitely handle everything, Victoria replied, supporting a tired and morally devastated John, working hard to keep the company growing and developing. Continuing to visit his parents all the time, John tells Victoria about everything, and, not doubting the woman's intellectual abilities, asks her to help him in some cases. Remembering her education that her parents gave her, Victoria is up to the task and helps John, giving him at least a little rest and relaxation to spend time with his daughter. Having made another deal, John arrives at the country house again and, taking Samantha and Victoria, leads with them to a restaurant to be alone and celebrate. The little girl is very happy about this and asks her father to go to an amusement park to play with Victoria. Agreeing to all his daughter's demands, John notices that Samantha is very attached to Victoria and, despite the age difference, they behave like best friends. A month passes unnoticed, and John arrives home and informs Victoria that Ariana has given birth to a baby girl. Rejoicing at this event, Harry threw a party at the office. Not everyone was happy about it, but many do not care what the occasion is, because the main thing is the opportunity to drink, have fun, and dance for free. Despite the party, Harry looked tired and devastated, as if he had carried and delivered this baby himself. John tried to talk to him during the party, but all attempts to find common ground failed. Deciding to give time not only to Victoria, but also to his little daughter, John left the woman alone with her thoughts and went to the nursery. "How are you doing at school? Is everything okay?" the man asked his daughter, playing childish games with her. "Yes, everything is great. Victoria is helping me with my lessons, so there are no problems." "That's good. I take it you two get along." "Yes, she's great and I like her a lot," Samantha admitted. "I like her a lot too," John said. "So maybe it's time to look at her," jokingly asked the man's mother, who overheard his conversation with her granddaughter. "What to look at her? We've known each other since childhood, and I know her better than I know myself," John replied, and after a few moments of thought, He realized that Victoria was really very interesting, pleasant, and pretty to him. Early in the morning, John leaves for work and, digging through business papers, goes about his usual business. Closer to lunch, his Israeli partners come to him, able not only to pay for the goods, but also to offer him a way to increase his income. In the course of the dialogue, they suggest investing money in a new project, the successful implementation of which will double the company's capital in just a few years. Realizing that such an idea should be discussed with Harry, John promises to think about it and reply in a few days. Going to his companion's office, John again fails to meet his business partner and calls him, but he does not answer. A couple of hours later, Harry shows up at the office and closes himself in the study to get some respite from Ariana's reproaches and the baby's constant crying. John insists on talking because he has important news that cannot be delayed. Israeli partners are offering to invest money in a new project. I've done a little research on the subject, and it seems like a more than profitable idea. Are we in or what? I'd love to, but I have other things on my mind right now. Yes? And what are your thoughts, may I ask? John asked irritably, realizing that there was a lot of money at stake. I'm tired of Ariana's ever-increasing demands. At first, I thought that everything would be fine, and it was a temporary phenomenon related to her pregnancy, but she gave birth, and the situation only continues to worsen. Buy boots, order a fur coat, update my closet, give me gold and diamonds, hire a nanny for the baby, buy me a car, and that's all in the last week. I'm not surprised, to be honest. From the first day, it was clear that you are not interested in her as a man, but as a bag of money, John replied, realizing that Ariana consciously became the mistress of an oligarch. I understand that, but we have a child together. What can I do about it? Harry asked in a sad voice, unable to change anything or make a risky decision. I don't know. I can't help you. I don't have such problems. Why don't we talk about work? John asked, trying to get back to the subject of the Israeli partners. Okay, let's. So, what are they offering? They suggest investing all our income not only in oil, but also in alternative energy sources, because they are the future, both in Europe and around the world. Yes, it's a good idea, but I don't have the money right now. What do you mean you don't have the money? We just recently received the interest from the deal with the Swiss. John asked in shock, not understanding how it is possible to lose money so quickly, which would be enough for a normal person for a lifetime. I can't forbid her to spend my money, Harry replied guiltily, realizing that it was wrong and admitting that he had become a weak and characterless man, unable to do anything drastic with his mistress. Let's then do the following way. I will invest money and pay for both of us, but with the condition that in 6 months you will pay me back the entire debt. Would that be okay with you? Yes, of course. I'll definitely pay it all back. Harry supported his friend's idea and, hearing the phone ringing, realized that Ariana wouldn't leave him alone and wanted something again. Deciding not to prevent his friend from communicating with his mistress, John went to his office and, calling Victoria, told her everything. She supported John's decision, appreciating his foresight and the prospect of capital growth. Having received Victoria's support, the man finally stopped doubting himself and his decision, called back the Israeli partners, and, having invested the money, signed a contract for the purchase and further realization of devices and mechanisms necessary for the creation of the alternative energy market. Did you remember that it's time to return the money? John asked, after waiting for the previously agreed-upon deadline. I don't have any money to spare right now, Harry replied pitifully, who had become not only sadder, but also more pathetic in appearance over the past 6 months. You realize I don't care much about that. You and I made a deal, and it's time to keep that promise. How about I pay off my debts by signing over some of my shares to you? Harry suggested, realizing it was his only option. All right, this option is fine with me, agreed John, and having invited a lawyer, formalized the transfer of shares with his companion. "I hope we're even now," Harry asked, and seeing the gesture of approval from his partner, went to his office. "Hi, I have good news for you. Get ready. We're going to the restaurant in an hour," John said, calling Victoria. "Hi, okay, I'll be waiting for you," answered the intrigued Victoria, guessing that the news must be very pleasant. During dinner, John not only told her that he had appropriated some of Harry's shares, but also congratulated Victoria because the entire share he had received today would be registered to her in the near future. "Why? I do not need anything. You are already very kind to me," modestly replied the woman, who became uncomfortable that she so openly uses the kindness of an old friend. "Don't make it up. Your parents were involved in the creation of this business, and you deserve to own a share of the company," John replied, reassuring Victoria. A couple of months later, a similar situation occurs and Harry, deprived of free money, realizes that he has to lose some more shares. Ariana stays on his neck, demanding more and more gifts, surprises, and trips. Not wanting to get into debt, Harry realized that it is easier to sell part of the business to a loyal companion and business partner, which he can buy back if possible. Having suggested it to Roma, he did not expect that John would agree so easily, and having delivered the necessary sum, would buy back another part of the shares. Having made a solid purchase, John rewrote the shares to Victoria, making her a full-fledged partner. Upon arriving home, John spends time with his parents, daughter, and Victoria. After playing with Samantha and doing homework with her, the man again invites Victoria to the restaurant, saying that he has very important news for her and in general has something to talk about. The woman gladly agrees and, wearing a beautiful evening dress, goes with John to the nearest restaurant to be alone and find out what exactly he wants to tell her. "I have to tell you a very pleasant news. I have rewritten to you another part of the shares, and now you are a full-fledged partner." "Are you crazy? Why did you do that?" Victoria asked, not believing her own ears. "Because you deserve it. You are a very sweet, kind, and good woman who has been treated unfairly, and I have to restore the balance. You don't owe me anything, because you didn't throw me out on the street. And yet I want to and will help you." "Thank you, John. You're a true friend," Victoria replied, thanking her husband's companion. "You're welcome, but I don't want to be your friend. I have feelings for you, and with full confidence, I can say that they are not friendly," replied John, afraid to look the woman in the eyes. "Are you serious?" Victoria asked in surprise, noticing that John was very embarrassed. "Yes, you're a wonderful person, and not only I noticed it, but also my daughter. She likes you very much because we were able to find a common language and become friends. She misses her mother, who abandoned her in the divorce, and I thought that Samantha would never let any woman near her or me, but you managed to change my mind about that." "Thank you. I'm very pleased with your words," Victoria replied, embarrassed, afraid to admit that she had become very attached to John, not only as a friend, but more than that. A week later, a new deal with the Germans was expected, which had been anticipated and prepared for more than 6 months. Harry, constantly preoccupied with Ariana, has completely forgotten about it and would hardly have remembered the meeting if not for a call from the lawyer reminding him to report to the office. Soon John, who had been preparing the deal with the German partners all this time, arrives at the office. Half an hour later, the foreign delegation arrives as well. Soon negotiations begin, which are resolved successfully. Harry and John put their signatures, but the lawyer is in no hurry to certify the document, as if delaying or waiting for something. Harry hurries the lawyer up, realizing that he had only asked Ariana for a few hours. "I'm sorry, but we can't finish the process as all the shareholders of the company must be present at the signing of the contract." "What do you mean? Me and John are here. Who else do you need?" "I'm waiting for Julia." The lawyer answered and explained that the company recently got a third shareholder whose signature is also required. John, what does that mean? Harry asked in surprise, turning to his companion. I was short of money, so I sold some shares to Julia. Don't worry, she's a very nice woman. I'll call her now, so she can come and sign the documents. John replied and went to another part of the office to call Victoria. After hearing about the business deal, Victoria was glad that she would finally be able to see her husband and talk to him, putting an end to the story. About an hour passed and John, standing by the window, began to smile. Here comes Julia, he said, glancing at Harry. Where is she? Show me, said a nervous Harry, and stood up to look at his mysterious companion. Walking over to the window, Harry turned white when he saw his wife getting out of the luxury auto. He was shocked that he never expected to see his spouse alive again. A few months after he dumped her in a dumpster with the homeless, Harry saw a news report on TV. It said that there had been a fire in an abandoned house not far from the dump, and that a young woman who looked like Victoria had died as a result. I don't get it. What kind of joke is this? Harry asked, glancing at John. She'll be here in a moment, and she'll explain everything herself, he replied calmly and returned to the conference table. Victoria, who had pretended to be her friend Julia, signed the documents and then escorted the lawyer and the German partners out, leaving John and Harry alone. Don't go anywhere, darling. I'll be back soon to tell you everything, Victoria said in a calm tone as she left the office. As soon as the door closed, Harry pounced on his business partner with reproach, trying to figure out what was going on. What is this? How could you do this to me? This is our new companion. What's wrong with that? John asked calmly, as if mocking his business partner. Are you joking, or do you really not realize that Victoria and Julia are the same person? Why, I understand everything perfectly well. Moreover, it was me who helped her to restore the documents to another name. Why? Why are you helping her all of a sudden? Harry asked in bewilderment, thinking that they didn't know each other well enough for John to do such generous and kind acts. You see, the problem is that you don't know everything about me. I used to live in the same stairwell as Victoria's parents, and I've known her since she was in diapers. We spent every day together until we were teenagers, but when she became your wife, we decided not to talk about it, realizing that you might get jealous of her, even though there was no reason to be. When she was left on the street, I was the only person she could confide in and call. After I took Victoria out of the hospital, I took her in. So what? You were friends, but why give her the business? Because since childhood I've been indebted not only to her, but also to Victoria's parents, who have passed away. Once she and I were playing on a frozen lake, and not noticing a crack, I fell through the ice. Victoria called her father, who was fishing nearby, and they saved my life. It would have taken a few more minutes for me to freeze all my limbs off, but that didn't happen thanks to Victoria's lightning-fast reaction and decision-making speed. Believe me, I'm capable of more than that for her sake, John replied, explaining his position and attitude toward his companion's wife. Just at this moment, Victoria returns to the office and informs that she is ready for a dialogue with her husband, hoping that it will be the last one for them. Not wanting to be present, John leaves and, after kissing Victoria on the cheek, promises to wait for her downstairs by the car. Kissing the man back, the woman promises not to be long, as she's already missed Samantha and would love to spend time with her rather than Harry. As soon as John left, Victoria sat down closer to her husband to sort out once and for all what he had done, putting him in his place. You know, there's only one thing I really regret, Victoria began. What's that? Harry asked, not realizing what it was about. About saying yes at the registry office. It was a huge mistake, because you weren't worthy of it. I spent 10 years working for you, helping you build a business, asking my parents to invest in your idea. And how did you repay me? I gave up my career and woke up every day just to take care of you, to nurse you and do everything I could to keep you focused on your work. And you got mixed up with the skirt chaser behind my back. She gave you a daughter. I could have had a baby too, if it wasn't for the fact that I had to carry you around like a baby. Not only did you ruin our marriage, spit on my parents' hard work and investment, but you threw me out on the street and thought you could get away with it. What are you going to do now? Harry asked guiltily, realizing that he had done something vile and despicable. I would have loved to tell the police, but time has passed and I let the situation at the dump go. I don't hold a grudge against you and I can forgive you for what you've done, but I'm not giving you the company. My parents' savings are invested in it, and it is not just a family business for me, but a memory of my relatives who have passed away. I understand you, I'm guilty, and I can hardly ask for forgiveness. Harry began to repent, realizing that he could already be behind bars, if not for the leniency of his wife. I'm glad you realize that you're not a hopeless person, but I don't need your apology. I've forgiven and forgotten you as a husband and a man, but I don't want to see you in the office again. Do whatever you want, but I don't want to see a trace of you here, Victoria replied, giving her husband conditions. Okay, I'll do everything. I'll leave and you won't remember me, but give me a couple of days, Harry replied. Deal? You have 2 days, Victoria said, and left the office and headed downstairs. As she hugged and kissed John, she realized that he really had feelings for her, and it seemed to her that they were completely mutual. Meanwhile, Harry, realizing his guilt, decided to do one last thing to please his wife. After packing all his things and clearing out his office, Harry returned home and informed Ariana that he and his daughter had to leave for another city. The young mother was unhappy with this decision, but Harry, hitting his fist on the table, convinced Ariana, and she, obeying the father of her child, agreed with everything he said. A few weeks later, John asks Victoria if she wants to fly to Paris. The woman laughed in response and said that she would go with great pleasure, because before everyone but her had been taken there. A couple of days later, John and Victoria fly to Paris, where the man, having rented one of the most prestigious restaurants, made Victoria a proposal. Not thinking long, she agreed. Upon returning home, Victoria and John organized a celebratory dinner, telling the joyful news to her parents and Samantha. The girl was genuinely happy and rejoiced most of all because she will finally have a loving and caring mother, which she has long dreamed of. A month later, the couple legalizes their relationship and, taking Samantha with them, goes on a honeymoon to Disneyland. 9 months later, they have a miracle baby boy.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.